The Forest of Death earned its name long before Konoha built training grounds inside it. The trees here grew wrong, too tall, too thick, their canopies so dense that noon looked like dusk on the forest floor. Things lived in the undergrowth that didn't live anywhere else. Centipedes the length of a man's arm, leeches that dropped from branches, spiders that built webs between trunks like fishing nets strung across a river. Naruto Uzumaki was lost, not the kind of lost where you're pretty sure you know the general direction. The kind of lost where every direction looked identical, where the moss grew on all sides of every trunk, and where the last landmark he recognized had been the giant snake that tried to eat him 40 minutes ago. He was fairly certain, concussed. Okay. He muttered, pressing his palm against a tree trunk to steady himself. The bark was slick with something he chose not to examine. Okay, Sasuke got bit by the creepy snake guy. Sakura was screaming, I got knocked into. Somewhere, he looked up. The canopy was a solid black ceiling. Great. Helpful. His jacket was torn across the left shoulder where a branch had caught him mid-fall. There was blood on his forehead, his own, already clotting thanks to the thing inside him that he tried not to think about too carefully. The 5-pronged seal that Orochimaru had slammed onto his stomach still throbbed like a second heartbeat, wrong and invasive, and his chakra felt like water trying to push through a crimped hose. He needed to find his team. Sasuke was in bad shape. The curse mark Orochimaru had left on his neck had already started doing something ugly. Naruto had seen the black flame-like pattern beginning to spread across Sasuke's skin before the snake bastard's tail had swatted him through 3 tree trunks and into open air. Naruto pushed off the tree and started moving. Direction didn't matter. Moving was better than standing still. Standing still meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering the way Orochimaru had looked at him. Through him, really, like Naruto was a minor obstacle between the snake and what he actually wanted. Naruto was used to being dismissed. He was used to the cold looks from villagers, the way teachers' eyes slid past him, the particular flavor of being treated as less than nothing. But Orochimaru's dismissal had been different, clinical. The man had examined him, found him lacking, and literally sealed away his best weapon in about 3 seconds flat. It pissed him off more than he wanted to admit. He'd gone maybe half a mile, hard to tell when every tree looked the same when he heard it. Not a sound, exactly. More like the absence of sound. The forest was never quiet in here. Things chittered and clicked and rustled constantly. But ahead of him, in a small depression between root systems, everything had gone silent. And then the scream. It was short, bitten off almost as soon as it started, like whoever made it had clamped down hard rather than let the sound escape. But it was human, and it was close, and it was filled with a quality of pain that made the hair on Naruto's arms stand up. He ran toward it. The depression opened into a small clearing, if you could call it that. The canopy was marginally thinner here, letting through a few anemic shafts of gray light. The ground was carpeted in dead leaves and the shed skins of something he preferred not to identify. Anko Mitarashi was on her knees in the center of it. Naruto recognized her. She'd been the proctor for the second exam, the woman who'd thrown a kunai past his cheek and then licked the blood off his face, which had been weird and kind of scary, and, if he was being honest, a little cool. She'd been loud and confident, and vaguely terrifying in the way that all competent jounin were terrifying. She didn't look terrifying now. She was doubled over with both hands clamped on the left side of her neck, her trench coat pooled around her on the ground. Her teeth were bared and her eyes were squeezed shut, and every muscle in her body was locked rigid. The veins in her neck and temple stood out like cables. Sweat had plastered her hair to her forehead, and her breathing came in these awful, hitching gasps that sounded like she was trying to inhale through a chest full of broken glass. Between her fingers, something glowed. 3 Tomo marks arranged in a circle, burning an ugly bruise purple, pulsing in time with Naruto's stomach dropped. It looked like what Orochimaru had put on Sasuke, exactly like it. The same mark, the same sickly energy. Hey. He crossed the clearing in 4 steps and dropped to his knees in front of her. Hey, you're the exam lady Anko-san, right? What's? Get back, she hissed through her teeth. Her eyes opened. They were glassy with pain and fury and something that looked uncomfortably like fear. Kid, get the hell away from me, this isn't. Another spasm hit her and she curled forward, forehead almost touching the ground. The sound she made was less than a scream and more than a groan. The purple light between her fingers intensified. Naruto didn't get back. You've got the same mark, he said. The same one that snake freak put on Sasuke. That's you've had this the whole time. Anko's laugh was a ragged, breathless thing. 13 years, kid, lucky me, right? She sucked in air. He's here, in the forest. I felt him in this thing. She slammed her fist against the ground hard enough to split the earth. It hasn't been this bad in years. It's like he's calling it. That tracked with what Naruto had seen. Orochimaru had been in the forest. He'd attacked Team 7, given Sasuke the mark, sealed Naruto's access to the fox's chakra, and disappeared like smoke. If the marks were connected to him, his presence probably lit them up like signal flares. I'm going after him, Anko said, and tried to stand. She made it about halfway before her knees buckled, and she caught herself on one hand. The curse mark pulsed again, and she made a sound like a wounded animal trying to stay quiet so predators wouldn't find it. Naruto had heard a lot of painful sounds in his life. He'd made most of them himself. There was something about the particular quality of this one, the practiced nature of it, the way she muffled it automatically, like she'd had years of experience containing her own agony, that hit him somewhere behind his ribs. 13 years. She'd been carrying this thing for 13 years. Can I look at it? He asked. What? The mark? Can I see it? She stared at him like he'd asked to examine the sun. Kid, you don't know what you're... I know it's a seal, Naruto said. I know it's got chakra running through it that isn't yours. I can feel it. That last part was true, and it surprised him even as he said it. He could feel it. Not with his normal senses, with something deeper, something that lived in the same place his chakra did. The curse mark was radiating energy like an infected wound radiated heat, and it was wrong. His own chakra was recoiling from it the way a hand flinches from a hot stove. But underneath the recoil, something else was happening. Something was reaching toward the mark. An instinct he didn't have a name for. A pull, like recognizing a puzzle you knew you could solve even before you understood the pieces. Anko was watching him. The pain was still carved into every line of her face, but through it, something shrewd was calculating behind her eyes. She was a jounin. A special jounin with a specialty in infiltration and assassination. Even crippled with agony, she was assessing him. You're Uzumaki, she said, not a question. Yeah, something shifted in her expression. Kushina's kid, Naruto went very still. You knew my mother, I knew of her. Everyone in the sealing division did. The Uzumaki were, she broke off as another wave of pain hit. When it passed, she was panting. Fine, look at it. Can't feel much worse than it already does. She pulled her hand away from her neck and turned her head to give him access. The curse mark sat in the hollow where her neck met her shoulder. 3 Tamo marks in a circle, and up close, it was even worse than Naruto had expected. The skin around it was inflamed and discolored, a mess of old scarring and fresh irritation, and the mark itself seemed to move, the Tamo rotating slowly, like something alive was stirring beneath the surface. The purple light pulsed. Naruto raised his hand toward it. His fingers stopped about an inch from the skin. The feeling was immediate and overwhelming. Like plunging his hand into a river of sewage, a current of dark, oily chakra that coated everything it touched. It was intelligent, this chakra. It had structure, purpose. It was a cage built from the inside, a network of channels and hooks and anchors that had grown into Anko's chakra system like a parasitic vine growing through a tree. 13 years of growth. 13 years of roots sinking deeper. And at the center of it, coiled like a snake in a nest, was a fragment of something that felt like Orochimaru himself. A sliver of consciousness. A piece of soul. Naruto's stomach turned. It's in deep, he said quietly. It's everywhere. It's got roots all through your chakra network. Anko's jaw tightened. I know, the Hawkage tried to contain it. 3 different seal masters tried. Best they could do was suppress it. On good days, it's just a dull ache. On bad days, she gestured at herself. They tried to contain it, Naruto repeated. Did anyone try to pull it out? The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. That's not possible, Anko said flatly. It's been tried. The root system is too integrated. You try to extract the foreign chakra, and you rip out the host's chakra network with it. 3 people died during extraction attempts before they stopped trying. Naruto heard her. He understood the words. He understood that she was telling him, from years of experience and pain, that what he was thinking was impossible and dangerous and stupid. He also understood, with a certainty that came from somewhere deeper than his brain, from his blood, from his chakra, from whatever it was inside him that had recognized the mark as a seal in the first place, that she was wrong, not about the danger, not about the difficulty, but about the impossibility. He could see it. Not with his eyes, with that other sense, the one he didn't have a name for. The curse mark's root system was complex, yes, integrated, yes, but it wasn't native. It was foreign chakra mimicking native pathways, like a vine that grows along a tree branch and eventually looks like part of the tree, but isn't. It could be separated. You just needed to be able to tell the difference between the vine and the branch, and Naruto could tell the difference. He didn't know how, he didn't know why, but the foreign chakra looked different to his senses. It was oily and dark where Anko's natural chakra was warm and sharp. The two were intertwined, but they weren't merged. There were gaps, seams, places where you could slip a blade of chakra between them and cut. I can do it, he said. Kid, I can see it. The mark, the root system, all of it. It's not part of you. It looks like it is, but it's not. It's growing alongside your chakra like weeds in a garden. I can tell which is which. He met her eyes. I can pull it out. Anko stared at him for a long moment. The pain was still there. It hadn't let up for a second, but behind it, something was happening in her expression. A war between hope and the scar tissue left by years of having hope burned out of her. You're 12. She said, yeah, you're a genin. Yeah. And you're telling me you can do something that 3 seal masters, 2 medicnin, and the Hawkage himself couldn't do. I'm telling you I can see something they couldn't, maybe because of, he gestured vaguely at himself. At the thing sealed inside him, at the blood that ran through his veins, at whatever it was about being in Uzumaki that made seals feel like a language he'd always known but never spoken aloud. I don't know why, but I can, and you're in pain and that thing is eating you and... Another pulse from the mark. Anko doubled over again, and this time a thin line of blood ran from the corner of her mouth where she'd bitten through her lip. The pulse was stronger, closer. As if Orochimaru, wherever he was in this forest, was reaching out through the mark, tightening his grip. When Anko raised her head, there was blood on her teeth and something desperate and furious in her eyes. If you fry my chakra network, I'll haunt you, she said. Do it. Naruto didn't hesitate. He placed both hands on the curse mark. The contact was electric. The dark chakra surged toward him like a living thing, trying to push him out to repel the intrusion. It was aggressive, defensive, and underneath the automated response, that sliver of Orochimaru's consciousness stirred, noticing, focusing, pushing back with cold intelligence. Naruto pushed harder. His chakra, what he could access through the mess Orochimaru's seal had made of his system, poured into the contact point. It wasn't enough. He could feel the shape of what he needed to do, but his reserves were crimped, throttled, the 5-pronged seal on his stomach choking his access to the fox. Deep in the seal, behind bars and darkness and 13 years of hate, something enormous shifted. Naruto felt it like a tidal wave felt from shore, the sheer pressure of it, the immensity. He'd touched the fox's chakra before, in moments of desperation, and it had always been like grabbing a live wire. Painful, overwhelming, barely controlled. This time was different. The fox's chakra didn't surge upward in a violent rush. It seeped. Like water finding cracks in a dam, it trickled past the 5-pronged seal through gaps, so tiny they shouldn't have existed. As if the seal on his stomach, for all its power, simply couldn't account for a connection this subtle. and Uzumaki reaching through his own chakra system with intention and precision rather than brute force. The trickle was enough. Red gold chakra laced through Naruto's own blue, and where it met the dark energy of the curse mark, the reaction was immediate and violent. The curse mark's chakra hissed. There was no other word for it, like water thrown on a hot skillet. The two energies were antithetical. The fox's chakra burned through Orochimaru's like acid through silk, but Naruto didn't let it burn indiscriminately. That instinct, the Uzumaki instinct, the seal sense, whatever it was, guided his hands. He could see the pathways clearly now, illuminated by the clash of energies. Anko's natural chakra network, warm and vibrant. The curse marks parasitic root system, dark and coiling. And the contact points between them, hundreds of tiny hooks where foreign chakra had latched onto native pathways. He started with the smallest hooks. The peripheral ones, out in the extremities of. Chapter 2. Teeth and venom. The tower at the center of the forest of death smelled like old concrete and antiseptic, and Anko hated it. She'd spent enough time in hospitals and holding facilities over the past 13 years to associate that smell with helplessness, with being poked and prodded and studied, while medics spoke about her in third person as if the curse mark had made her furniture. She was sitting on the edge of a metal cot in one of the tower's staging rooms, rolling her neck in slow circles. Left, right, full rotation, no pain. She did it again, still nothing. Just the normal, almost forgotten sensation of muscles moving under skin without a white-hot spike of agony accompanying every motion. She couldn't stop touching the spot where the mark had been. Her fingers kept drifting up to the hollow of her neck, pressing against smooth skin, finding nothing. No raised scar tissue, no heat, no pulse of foreign chakra nesting inside her like a parasite, just skin, just her 13 years. 13 years, she'd carried that thing, and now it was gone, ripped out by a 12-year-old genin who was currently passed out cold on the cot across the room, drooling on his own jacket. Anko watched him sleep and tried to organize what she was feeling into something that made sense. She couldn't. The extraction had taken maybe 20 minutes, though it had felt like hours. The kid had worked through the curse mark's root system with a precision that would have embarrassed a master surgeon, methodical, unhurried, even as the mark fought back with everything it had. She'd felt every disconnection like a hook being pulled from flesh. Not painless, but clean. The difference between having a tooth yanked out by a drunk with pliers and having it extracted by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Toward the end, when he'd reached the core, that cold, coiled knot of Orochimaru's presence that had lived at the center of her chakra system for over a decade, the kid's face had gone tight and hard and far too old for 12. He'd grabbed it with both hands, metaphysically speaking, and pulled. The thing had screamed on its way out. Not audibly. In her chakra. A shriek of violated ownership, of a predator having its kill stolen, and underneath it, faint and furious, the echo of Orochimaru's actual voice, "This is mine," and then it was gone. Burned away between the kid's blue chakra and the red-gold undercurrent that she recognized, with a jolt, as the Kyuubi's. The curse mark dissolved like ink in water, and for the first time since she was 14 years old, Anko's chakra system was entirely her own. She'd blacked out for a few seconds. When she came to, the kid was swaying on his knees, pale as paper, grinning at her like an idiot. "Did it work?" he'd asked. She'd touched her neck, found nothing, and burst into tears. That was the part she was trying not to think about too hard. Anko Mitarashi did not cry. She drank, she swore. She threw sharp objects at people who annoyed her, and she ate enough dango to give a civilian diabetes, but she did not cry. Except apparently she did, because she'd sat in the dirt of that clearing and sobbed like a child while a 12-year-old genin awkwardly patted her shoulder and said, There, in a tone that suggested he'd seen the gesture on television, but never experienced it personally. Which, knowing what she knew about how the village treated Jinchuriki, he probably hadn't. That thought was what crystallized it. The formless enormity of what she was feeling collapsed into a single, sharp point of clarity. This kid, this loud, brash, universally dismissed kid that the entire village treated like a stain on the floorboards, had done something for her that the Hokage couldn't. That wouldn't be done by any of the dozens of powerful shinobi in this village who had the resources to try. Not because they lacked the ability, but because Anko Mitarashi, Orochimaru's former student, the woman with the snake mark, wasn't worth the effort. And Naruto hadn't even hesitated. She was still sitting on the cot, fingers on her unmarked neck, when the door opened and the Hokage walked in. Hiruzen Sarutobi looked every one of his years tonight. The forest of death situation had escalated beyond anything the exam was designed to handle. An S-rank, missing nin infiltrating a genin exam would do that, and the weight of it showed in the lines of his face and the heaviness of his step. He was accompanied by two Anbu, faceless behind their masks, who took positions on either side of the door. His eyes went to Anko first, then to Naruto's sleeping form, then back to Anko, specifically to her neck where his gaze stayed for a long time. "Show me," he said quietly. Anko pulled the collar of her coat aside and turned her head. She heard the old man's breath catch, a tiny sound, barely audible, but she'd known Hiruzen Sarutobi since she was a girl and she knew what his surprise sounded like. "It's gone," he said. "Completely, not suppressed, not dormant, gone. I've checked my own chakra system 3 times. There's no residual foreign chakra, no fragment, nothing." Hiruzen crossed the room slowly and extended his hand toward her neck. She felt the subtle pressure of a diagnostic jutsu, gentle, thorough, the touch of a man who'd been a shinobi for 6 decades. It lasted almost a full minute. When he withdrew his hand, his expression was something she'd never seen on the old man's face before. He looked shaken. "The root system," he said. "The integration with your tenketsu, all of it." He pulled all of it out. Took him about 20 minutes. Hiruzen turned to look at the boy on the cot. Naruto had shifted in his sleep, one arm dangling off the edge, his mouth open. He looked exactly like what he was, a 12-year-old kid who'd pushed himself to exhaustion. "How?" the Hokage asked. "You're asking the wrong person. I just sat there and tried not to pass out while he worked, but I can tell you what it felt like." She paused, choosing her words carefully. He could see the curse mark structure. Not just sense it, see it, differentiate it from my own chakra network at a resolution I've never seen in any sensor type. He separated the foreign chakra from mine strand by strand, like he was, she grasped for the right comparison. Like untangling 2 different colors of thread from the same knot, and he used the Kyuubi's chakra to burn away the foreign energy as he extracted it. He accessed the Kyuubi's chakra. Despite Orochimaru's seal, not much, a trickle, but he used it like a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. Hiruzen was quiet for a long time. His pipe appeared in his hand, an old habit, a thinking gesture, though he didn't light it indoors. He turned it between his fingers, staring at the sleeping boy. "Use Uzumaki bloodline," he murmured. Kushina had extraordinary chakra sensitivity, but even she never demonstrated anything quite like this. With respect, Hokage-sama, did anyone ever test her for something like this? Did anyone ever put her in front of a curse seal and see what happened? The old man's silence was its own answer. Anko pressed forward. He's untrained. He didn't know what he was doing. He was operating on instinct, raw talent, and bloodline intuition. If someone actually taught him Fuin Jutsu? I'm aware of the implications, Anko. Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, this village has spent 12 years treating the most gifted seal user since the 4th Hokage like garbage, and tonight, he did something impossible by accident. The words came out sharper than she intended, or maybe exactly as sharp as she intended. The curse mark hadn't just been a source of pain, it had been a leash. A constant reminder that she was Orochimaru's property, damaged goods, a liability the village tolerated rather than valued. And the village had done the same thing to Naruto, with a different mark and a different set of whispered cruelties, and the parallel burned like acid. Hiruzen took the hit. She saw it land, a flinch in his eyes, a tightening around his mouth. He was a good man. She believed that. But he was also a tired old man who had let good intentions substitute for action for far too long, and they both knew it. "What do you want, Anko?" he asked. "I want to train him." The words were out before she'd fully decided to say them, but the moment they hit the air, she knew they were right. Not a request, a statement of intent. "I owe him a debt I can't repay, but I can make sure he survives long enough to realize what he is." Orochimaru felt the mark break, I guarantee you that, which means he now knows there's someone in this village who can destroy his curse seals. How long do you think it takes before Naruto moves from irrelevant genin to priority target in that snake's mind? The Hokage's expression darkened. He'd clearly already considered this. "And it's not just Orochimaru," Anko continued. "Naruto can break curse seals. Do you understand what that means for every person in this village who uses sealing as a control mechanism?" She didn't say Danzo's name. She didn't have to. Hiruzen's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and one of the Anbu by the door shifted weight, a micro-movement that might have been involuntary, but told Anko exactly how aware everyone in this room was of the implications. "He's assigned to Kakashi's team," Hiruzen said carefully. "Kakashi can keep him for team assignments. I'm talking about actual training. Combat, infiltration, survival, and fuinjutsu, the stuff he should have been learning for years." She held the old man's gaze. "You owe him that much, so do I." Another long silence. Hiruzen looked at Naruto again. The boy mumbled something in his sleep. It sounded like ramen, and rolled over, pulling his torn jacket tighter around himself. "I'll consider it," the Hokage said. "Consider fast. The exam finals are in a month and Orochimaru is planning something." I could feel it through the mark before it broke. Anticipation, preparation. He's not here just for Sasuke. There's something bigger coming. Hiruzen nodded slowly. "Rest. We'll speak more tomorrow. I need to consult with Jiraiya about the boy's seal." He left. The Anbu followed. The door clicked shut, and Anko was alone again with the sleeping genin who'd broken her chains. She looked at him for a long time. Then she stood, crossed the room, and picked up his dangling arm, tucking it back onto the cot so it wouldn't go numb. She pulled the thin medical blanket up to his chin. Paused. "I don't know if you can hear me, kid," she said quietly, "but I'm going to keep you alive if it kills me. That's not a figure of speech." She settled into the chair by the door, drew a kunai, laid it across her knees, and kept watch until morning. Naruto woke up to the smell of food and the sound of an argument. The food smell was dango, sweet, grilled, unmistakable. The argument was happening outside the door, muffled by concrete but clearly heated. He recognized Anko's voice, clipped and aggressive. The other voice took him a moment to place, and when he did, he sat up so fast the blood rushed from his head. "Kakashi." "My student, Mitarashi, not yours." The team assignments were made by the Hokage. "Your student? Really, that's what we're calling it. Tell me, Kakashi, what exactly have you taught him in the past 6 months? What jutsu? What strategy? What anything?" Team 7's training regimen is bullshit. Team 7's training regimen is you showing up late, teaching tree walking 2 weeks before a Chunin exam, and then spending 90% of your attention on the Uchiha. I've read the mission reports. The Uzumaki kid has been winging it on shadow clones and gut instinct since graduation. A pause. Naruto could picture Kakashi's expression, the flat, half-lidded eye that meant he was either bored or dangerous. With Kakashi, those two states were uncomfortably close. "You're not wrong," Kakashi said, and Naruto blinked because he hadn't expected that. "But there are factors you're not aware of. Sasuke's situation is that he got a curse mark from the man who gave me mine, and the kid in that room cured mine in 20 minutes, so maybe your priorities need adjusting." "Anko, I'm not asking for your permission. The Hokage is considering my request to train Naruto. I'm telling you as a courtesy. You can keep him for team missions and the exam. Everything else is mine." Another pause. Longer this time. "You care about him," Kakashi said, and his voice had changed. The defensive sharpness was gone, replaced by something quieter. "Already. He cured me. He's the first person in 13 years who looked at my curse mark and saw a problem to solve instead of a reason to keep me at arm's length. So yes, Kakashi, I care about him. Deal with it. Footsteps. The door opened. Anko walked in carrying a stick of dango in each hand and a paper bag tucked under her arm. She spotted Naruto sitting up and grinned, a real grin, wide and sharp, and nothing like the manic showmanship she'd displayed at the start of the exam. "Morning, kid. You sleep like the dead." "Hungry?" She tossed him the paper bag. Inside were 4 sticks of dango and a carton of milk. It wasn't ramen, but Naruto's stomach was a screaming void, and he would have eaten tree bark at this point. "I heard you and Kakashi-sensei," he said around a mouthful of dango. "Good, saves me the recap." She dropped into the chair opposite him and bit into her own dango with the decisive satisfaction of someone who considered breakfast a competitive sport. "Here's the deal, Naruto. I told the Hokage I want to train you. Supplement what Kakashi's doing, fill in the gaps, and specifically work on your sealing abilities because what you did last night is—" She paused, and for a moment, the brashness slipped and something raw showed through. "It's unprecedented, and it's going to paint a target on your back. From Orochimaru, and from people inside this village who would very much like to control someone with your abilities." She leaned forward. "That thing you did to my curse mark. There are other seals in this world that work on the same principle, foreign chakra, used to bind, control, and suppress. Some of them are on people in this village right now. People who are being controlled against their will. The people running those operations are not going to be happy that you exist." Naruto stopped chewing. He wasn't stupid, despite what his grades suggested. He knew about secrets in Konoha. He'd grown up in the margins, in the places where nobody watched what they said, because they assumed he wasn't worth watching. He'd heard whispers about Root, about the elders, about things that happened in the dark that the Hokage either couldn't or wouldn't stop. "You're talking about Danzo," he said. Anko's eyebrows rose. "Huh, smart kid, don't say that name too loud in this building. But yes. So what do? We make you strong enough that it doesn't matter, fast enough, skilled enough, and dangerous enough that anyone who comes for you regrets it. And we do it in a month, because the Chunin exam finals are in 30 days, and I guarantee Orochimaru has plans for that event." Naruto looked at her. She was leaning forward in her chair, elbows on her knees, dango stick between her teeth like a cigarette. The collar of her coat was open, and the skin where the curse mark had been was clean. She looked different from the woman who'd hosted the second exam, lighter, somehow. Like someone had removed a weight from her shoulders that she'd been carrying so long she'd forgotten what standing straight felt like. "Why?" he asked. "I mean, I'm glad you want to help, but why? You don't even know me." "You're right, I don't." She pulled the dango stick from her mouth and pointed it at him. "But you didn't know me either. You found a stranger in pain and you helped her. Didn't think about it, didn't calculate the angles, just helped. That's either incredibly stupid or incredibly rare, and since I'm the direct beneficiary, I'm going with rare." She stood up, cracked her neck, both sides, easily, without a wince, and Naruto saw the brief flash of wonder in her eyes at the absence of pain, and jerked her head toward the door. "Finish your food. The prelims start in 2 hours, and I need to brief you on what to expect." "Wait, Anko-san, Anko, just Anko. You pulled a piece of Orochimaru's soul out of my neck, kid. I think we're past honorifics." Despite everything, the exhaustion, the residual ache from Orochimaru's seal on his stomach, the weight of what she'd just told him about targets and enemies, and a world of danger he was only beginning to understand, Naruto grinned. "Okay, Anko, let's go." The preliminary arena was a repurposed sparring hall in the tower's basement level, a wide concrete floor with balcony walkways on either side where non-combatants could observe. The lighting was flat and industrial. There were bloodstains on the floor from previous exams that no amount of cleaning had fully removed. The genin who'd made it through the forest of death were gathered on the balconies, arranged by team. Naruto found Sakura first. She looked exhausted, her usual careful grooming undone by 2 days in the forest, but she was alert and upright. Sasuke stood next to her, Naruto's gaze locked onto Sasuke's neck. The curse mark was visible just above his collar, 3 Tamo marks, identical to the ones that had been on Anko. They weren't active, weren't glowing, but Naruto could feel them. That same sense that had guided him through Anko's extraction was singing in the back of his skull, identifying the foreign chakra, mapping its root system. It was newer than Anko's had been, only 2 days old, which meant the roots were shallower, less integrated, easier to pull. If Sasuke would let him. Sasuke. The Uchiha turned. He looked rough, dark circles under his eyes, a feverish quality to his skin, and that particular brand of rigid self-control that meant he was holding something back through sheer willpower. The mark on his neck pulsed faintly as Naruto got close, as if recognizing the chakra that had destroyed its twin. Naruto. Sasuke's eyes narrowed slightly, assessing. Where have you been? Long story. Quick version, I found the exam proctor in the forest, Anko. She has the same mark Orochimaru put on you, had past tense. He met Sasuke's eyes. I removed it. The silence that followed was impressive. Sakura's mouth opened and stayed open. Sasuke went very still, the kind of stillness that was its own form of explosion, everything held in check by force of will. You removed it, Sasuke repeated. His voice was flat, carefully flat. Completely. No residual chakra, no root system, nothing, she's clean. Naruto stepped closer and lowered his voice. Let me do the same for you. It's newer, which means it'll be easier. I can do it right now before the prelims. For a fraction of a second, so brief Naruto would have missed it if he hadn't been watching Sasuke's face like a hawk. Something flickered in the Uchiha's expression. Relief. Hope. The instinctive reach of someone in pain toward the possibility of its absence. Then the walls came up. Naruto watched it happen in real time, the shutters closing, the jaw setting, the pride reasserting itself like a fortress rebuilt in an instant. I don't need your help, Sasuke said. It's not about needing help. It's about, I said I'm fine. The words came out clipped hard. Sasuke turned away, presenting his back, and the curse mark, to Naruto in a gesture that managed to be both dismissal and something uncomfortably close to hiding. Focus on your own fights. Naruto opened his mouth to push, but a hand landed on his shoulder. Anko, who'd come up behind him with the silent tread of someone who'd spent 15 years in covert ops. She shook her head once, barely a movement. Not now, her eyes said. Not like this. Naruto clenched his jaw but stepped back. The offer was made. You couldn't force someone to accept help. Even when the thing hurting them was literally a piece of a monster growing inside their body. But watching Sasuke lean against the railing with one hand unconsciously pressed to the mark on his neck, Naruto promised himself he'd ask again. And again. As many times as it took. The examiner for the prelims was a jounin named Hayate Gecko, a sickly-looking man with a persistent cough and a sword on his back. He explained the rules. One-on-one matches, random pairings, anything goes short of killing, with the resigned air of someone who knew at least one genin was going to try to kill someone anyway. The electronic board on the wall lit up, cycling through names. The first match was Sasuke versus a sound genin named Yoroi Akado. Naruto watched the fight with new eyes, eyes that could sense the curse mark's activity like a beacon. Sasuke was holding it back. The mark flared twice during the match, dark patterns crawling across his skin before he forced them to recede through pure stubbornness. He won, but it was ugly. A last-second improvised taijutsu combo that owed more to desperation than skill. Kakashi appeared the moment the match ended, scooping Sasuke up for what he called medical treatment and what Naruto recognized, with a twist of irritation, as curse mark containment. More suppression. More managing the symptoms while the disease stayed rooted. Other matches came and went. Shino methodically dismantled his opponent with bugs. Kankuro won with a puppet trick that was clever if you liked that sort of thing. Sakura and Ino fought each other to a double knockout that was painful to watch for reasons that had nothing to do with technique. Then the board lit up with Naruto's name, Uzumaki Naruto vs. In Yuzuka, Kiba was already grinning when Naruto jumped down to the arena floor. Akamaru perched on his head, yapping. "All right, easy match." Kiba cracked his knuckles. "No offense, Naruto, but you were dead last in the academy." "This is gonna be quick." From the balcony, Naruto heard Anko click her tongue, not in worry, in anticipation. She'd spent 2 hours before the prelims cramming what she could into his skull, not jutsu, there wasn't time, but principles, how to control distance, how to read an opponent's weight distribution, where to hit a body so it stopped working. The kind of knowledge that took years to accumulate and Anko had distilled into a concentrated dose of brutal pragmatism. "When someone tells you you're going to lose," she'd said, "they're giving you a gift. They're telling you they've already decided the fight, which means they've stopped thinking. You should never stop thinking." Naruto settled into a stance, not the academy standard form, something lower, looser, that Anko had shown him in those 2 hours. Weight on the balls of his feet. Hands open rather than fisted. Center of gravity dropped. "Ready?" Hayate asked between coughs. "Ready," Naruto said. "Begin." Kiba came fast. He was always fast. In Yuzuka Taijutsu was built on speed and aggression, overwhelming the opponent with ferocity before they could mount a defense. Akamaru leaped from his head to flank left while Kiba drove in from the right. A classic pincer movement that had probably worked on every sparring partner Kiba had ever faced. Naruto pivoted, not backward, sideways, into the gap between the two attack vectors. Kiba's clawed strike passed through the space where his head had been a quarter second ago. Naruto caught Kiba's extended wrist, redirected his momentum, and threw him into Akamaru's path. Dog and boy collided in a tangle of limbs. The balcony went quiet. Kiba was up in a second, Akamaru bouncing to his feet beside him. The grin was gone, replaced by confusion and the beginning of wariness. "The hell was that? Since when do you know how to?" Naruto was already moving. He crossed the distance between them in 2 steps. Not with his old, telegraphed charges, but with the efficient, ground-eating stride Anko had drilled into him. Kiba tried to set himself, and Naruto feinted left, watched Kiba commit to the block, and drove his right palm into the Inuzuka's solar plexus. The hit was clean and hard. Kiba folded around it with a strangled wheeze, and Naruto didn't stop. He hooked a foot behind Kiba's ankle, swept his base, and drove him into the concrete floor. The impact cracked the surface and Kiba bounced once, gasping. Akamaru snarled and lunged. Naruto caught the little dog midair. Gently, he wasn't going to hurt an animal, and set him down behind him, then put a foot on Kiba's chest before the Inuzuka could rise. "Stay down," Naruto said. There wasn't any malice in it, just certainty. Kiba stared up at him. His eyes were wide. Not with pain, with incomprehension. This wasn't the Naruto he knew. This wasn't the deadlast who threw wild punches and relied on shadow clones spammed to overwhelm through sheer numbers. This was someone who'd read his attack, countered it cleanly, and put him on the ground in under 15 seconds. "What the?" Kiba wheezed. "When?" Chapter 3. Blood Ink, the training ground Anko chose, was not on any official map. It sat in the deep northeastern corner of Konoha's military district, wedged between the outer wall and a decommissioned weapons depot that had been condemned after the Kyuubi attack and never rebuilt. The clearing was maybe 60 meters across, ringed by scarred trees and cratered earth from years of unofficial use by Jounin who wanted to go hard without filling out property damage forms. There was a stream running along the western edge, cold and fast, fed by mountain runoff. The ground was a mix of packed dirt and stone. "This is where I trained after Orochimaru left," Anko said, standing in the center of the clearing with her hands on her hips. Dawn was breaking behind her, painting the sky in shades of orange and steel. "Nobody comes here, nobody watches." Which matters, because what we're about to do is going to attract attention if the wrong people see it. Naruto stood across from her, still working through a yawn. She'd woken him at 4 in the morning by throwing a kunai into his apartment wall from the street below. The kunai had a note attached, "Training ground. 10 minutes. Don't eat." He'd learned quickly that Anko's concept of mentorship did not include coddling. It was the first day of the training month before the Chunin exam finals, and Anko had a plan. She'd laid it out for him the night after the prelims, pacing his apartment, which she'd entered through the window without asking, while eating dango and talking fast. "You've got 4 things going for you," she'd said, ticking them off on her fingers. 1. Chakra reserves that are frankly stupid. 2. Shadow clones, which means you can parallel process training. 3. The Uzumaki bloodline, which gives you a natural affinity for sealing arts that we haven't even begun to explore. 4. You're unpredictable, and in a fight, unpredictable beats technically perfect every single time. "And the stuff going against me?" Naruto had asked. "Your taijutsu is brawling, not fighting. Your tactical thinking is good but untrained, you improvise well, but you've never learned principles. You have 0 ranged ninjutsu beyond shadow clones. Your chakra control is garbage, partly because you have so much of it and partly because nobody ever bothered to teach you proper exercises. And you've got an S-rank seal on your stomach that some snake bastard slapped on you, which is throttling your access to the fox's chakra. So, a lot going against me. A lot we can fix, that's the difference." Now, standing in the clearing in the pre-dawn chill, Anko held up a single finger. "First things first, that seal Orochimaru put on you, the 5-pronged thing on your stomach, it needs to come off." Naruto's hand went to his abdomen. He'd been living with the 5-pronged seal for days now, and it was like trying to breathe through a cloth. His chakra moved sluggishly, and the connection to the Kyubai's power that he'd briefly tapped during Anko's extraction was almost completely blocked. Kakashi-sensei said only a seal master could remove it. He mentioned Jiraiya's in the village. "He arrived 2 days ago. The Hokage called him in because of Orochimaru." Anko crossed her arms. "But here's the thing, I think you can remove it yourself." "Me?" "You pulled a 13-year-old parasitic soul fragment out of my chakra network. A disruption seal on your own stomach should be child's play by comparison. The question is whether you can work on your own system." Naruto considered this. The Uzumaki sense, that was what he'd started calling it, for lack of a better term, was always active now. Ever since the extraction, it was like a new sense had been permanently switched on. He could feel seals the way normal people felt heat or cold. The 5-pronged seal on his stomach was a constant presence, a tight knot of foreign chakra that disrupted the flow between his own reserves and the Kyubai's. He lifted his shirt. The seal was visible as a circle of kanji around his navel, superimposed over the larger, more complex structure of the Kyubai's seal underneath. With his Uzumaki sense, the difference between the two was obvious. The Kyubai's seal was a masterwork, layer upon layer of interlocking arrays that hummed with a deep, resonant power. The 5-pronged disruption seal was crude by comparison, effective, certainly, but inelegant. Like someone had jammed a stick into the gears of a clock. "I can see it," he said. It's just a disruption pattern. 5 points of interference that break up the chakra flow between me and," he gestured vaguely downward, toward the deeper seal. "It's not integrated like your curse mark was. It's sitting on top. So I just..." He pressed his fingers to the seal's edge. His chakra responded instantly, reaching into the pattern, finding the 5 anchor points. They were strong. Orochimaru was no amateur, but they were foreign. His system recognized them as intrusions. And the Uzumaki sense gave him something that no other sensor type had, the ability to differentiate between self and other at the most fundamental level of chakra interaction. He grabbed the first anchor point and pulled. It came free with a snap of released energy. The second followed. The third. By the fourth, he could already feel the difference, his chakra rushing to fill the cleared channels like water released from a dam. The 5th anchor point resisted briefly, then dissolved under the combined pressure of his chakra and the Kyubai's, which surged upward like something that had been held underwater, finally breaking the surface. The disruption seal faded from his skin. Gone. The effect was immediate and staggering. His chakra reserves, already enormous, suddenly had flow again. The crimped hose sensation that had plagued him since Orochimaru's attack vanished, replaced by a torrent of power that made his skin tingle and the air around him shimmer. And beneath it, deep and vast and burning, the Kyubai's chakra pulsed in steady rhythm, no longer blocked but available. Not free, the original seal still held and held firmly, but accessible through the proper channels that the disruption seal had been jamming. Naruto took a breath and felt like he was breathing fully for the first time in days. "That's more like it," Anko said, watching him with sharp eyes. She'd taken a half-step back when the chakra surged, not in fear, but in the instinctive caution of a combat veteran reacting to a sudden spike of power. "How do you feel?" "Like someone unplugged my ears and I can hear again." He flexed his hands. Chakra crackled between his fingers, blue with traces of gold. "Everything's so loud. Good loud or bad loud? Good, definitely good. Then let's not waste it." She reached into her coat and produced a scroll, old, slightly battered, with the Uzumaki spiral embossed on its seal clasp. "The Hokage gave me this last night. It's from the village archives, one of the few Uzumaki clan texts that survived the destruction of Uzushiagakure. Basic sealing theory, foundational arrays, and," she tapped the scroll, "exercises for developing what they called the Kagura Shingen. The mind's eye of the Kagura. It's the formal name for what you've been doing instinctively, sensing chakra at a structural level." Naruto took the scroll with something close to reverence. An Uzumaki text, something from his family, his clan, his people. He'd grown up with nothing. No family photos, no heirlooms, no stories. This battered scroll was the first tangible piece of his heritage he'd ever held. Anko saw his expression, and her own softened for just a moment before the brashness reasserted itself. "Don't get sentimental on me, kid. That's a textbook, not a teddy bear. I expect you to have the first 3 chapters memorized by tonight." "How?" "There's gotta be 100 pages in here. Shadow clones, Naruto. You can make hundreds of copies of yourself, and when they dispel, you retain everything they learned. Cage Bunshin is the single most broken training tool in existence. Why do you think it's a forbidden jutsu? You're going to make 50 clones, divide them into groups, and parallel process your training while the original," she pointed at him, "works with me on combat." Naruto stared at her. That works. The clone memory transfer works for learning." "You didn't know." "Nobody told me. Kakashi-sensei never. I've been using shadow clones for months and nobody." The look on his face must have been something, because Anko's expression went through several complicated changes before settling on a carefully controlled blankness that was somehow more furious than open anger. "Well," she said, "now you know, make your clones." Naruto made 50. The clearing filled with identical orange-clad genin, and Anko organized them with the efficiency of a field commander, a skill she'd honed during years of running infiltration teams. 20 clones got the Uzumaki scroll and instructions to work through it systematically, 5 at a time on each chapter, comparing notes and dispelling in sequence to layer the information. 15 clones were set to chakra control exercises, water walking, leaf balancing, kunai spinning, that Anko laid out in increasing difficulty. 10 clones were given basic trap-making materials and a field manual on improvised explosive tags and barrier seals. 5 clones were assigned to Taijutsu Kata, drilling the movements Anko had shown him before the prelims until they were burned into muscle memory, and the original stood in front of Anko, who smiled at him in a way that showed a lot of teeth. "Now," she said, "you and I are going to spar. And I'm not going to be gentle." She wasn't. The first 3 days were a blur of bruises, breakthroughs, and an amount of physical pain that Naruto would later describe as educational. Anko's fighting style was nothing like what they taught at the academy. It was dirty, efficient, and designed around a single principle: end the fight as fast as possible by whatever means necessary. She fought with kunai, with senbon, with her hands and elbows and knees, and with a vicious creativity that turned every element of the environment into a weapon. A shinobi who fights fair is a shinobi who dies tired. She told him on the second morning after putting him on his back for the 14th time. Your opponent has a blind spot. Exploit it, they're off balance, push them, they turn their back, punish them. Chivalry is for samurai, we're killers. It was a far cry from Uruka's lectures on the will of fire. But Naruto absorbed it like a sponge, because underneath the brutality was something he'd been starving for his entire life. Someone who took his training seriously. Someone who showed up every day, who watched his form with critical eyes and corrected his mistakes in real time, who pushed him to his limits and then pushed past them. By the 4th day, his taijutsu had transformed. Not into mastery. That would take years, but from undisciplined brawling into something functional and dangerous. His shadow clone memory stacking meant he was accumulating experience at a rate that would have been impossible for any other student. 50 clones training for 10 hours was 500 hours of experience per day. In 4 days, he'd logged the equivalent of over 2,000 hours of practice. And the ceiling work was where things got truly extraordinary. The Uzumaki scroll was a revelation. The foundational theory read like a language Naruto had always spoken, but never seen written down. Concepts that should have been abstract and difficult clicked into place with an immediacy that startled even Anko. By the end of the 1st day, his clone groups had worked through basic seal structure, chakra inscription theory, and the fundamentals of array design. By the 3rd day, he was modifying standard explosive tags to triple their output. By the 5th day, he was creating original seals. Not complex ones. Simple things. A storage seal that was more efficient than the standard model, a barrier tag that could be deployed with a touch instead of the usual hand sign activation. A disruption seal, ironic, given his recent experience with one that could scramble an opponent's chakra flow on contact. But the fact that he was creating original work after 5 days of study had implications that made Anko's head spin. I talked to one of the archive keepers. She told him on the 6th morning, watching him inscribe a seal array on a practice post with brush and ink. His brushwork was getting better, still rough, but the lines had a fluidity that came from the Uzumaki bloodline's natural affinity. She said it took most seal apprentices 6 months to reach the point where they could modify existing arrays. You're creating new ones in less than a week. It just makes sense, Naruto said, not looking up from his work. The brush moved in confident strokes, a circle, then branching lines, then the kanji for contain and redirect placed at specific intersection points. It's like, you know how some people can hear a song once and play it back? That's what seals are like for me. I see the structure and I understand what it's doing and why, and then I can see how to change it. That's the Uzumaki Kagura Shingen. Your clan didn't just use seals, they perceived chakra at a level that let them interact with its fundamental structure. Other seal masters learn the rules and follow them. You see the rules and understand why they're rules, which means you know when to break them. Naruto finished the array and pushed chakra into it. The practice post glowed briefly, then a shimmer of energy enclosed it in a thin, translucent barrier. He flicked a kunai at it. The kunai stopped dead on the barrier's surface, hung for a moment, then ricocheted back the way it came with twice its original velocity. Reflection seal, he said. Turns an incoming attack's kinetic energy back on the attacker. I based it on the standard barrier tag but reversed the absorption matrix. You based it on Naruto. That's a B-rank defensive seal. You just created a B-rank seal 6 days into your training. Is that good? That's insane. Keep going. On the 7th day, Jiraiya showed up. Naruto was in the middle of a spar with Anko, real speed now, not the half-pace instructional matches of the first days, when he felt a new presence at the edge of the clearing. His Kagura Shingen lit up with information. A massive chakra signature, deep and layered, with a warmth to it that reminded him of sun-baked stone. Whoever this person was, they were powerful. Cage level, easily. He disengaged from Anko mid-exchange. She let him, because she'd felt it too, and turned to face the tree line. The man who stepped out of the shadows was tall, broad-shouldered, with a mane of white hair that fell past his waist and a face that was equal parts weather-beaten and mischievous. He wore a horned forehead protector with the kanji for oil, wooden geta sandals, and a red haori over mesh armor. A large scroll was strapped to his back. He looked at Naruto, then at Anko. Then at the training ground, which was littered with seal arrays, practice posts, scattered clones, currently running through Taijutsu kata in the background, and the general debris of a week's intensive training. Well, Jiraiya said, Sensei wasn't kidding. Anko's posture shifted subtly. Not hostile, but wary. She knew who Jiraiya was, everyone did. One of the legendary Sanin, Konoha's spy master, the man who'd trained the fourth Hokage. Also, notably, Naruto's godfather, a fact that Anko had uncovered during her background research and filed away as ammunition for future arguments. Jiraiya-sama, she said. Come to observe, come to help, actually. He walked into the clearing with the easy confidence of someone who'd walked into 1,000 dangerous places and walked out of all of them. His eyes were on Naruto, and there was something in them, something complicated, layered with guilt and affection and the particular weight of someone meeting a responsibility they'd been avoiding for 12 years. So you're Naruto, he said. You look like your old man. You knew my father. The words were out before Naruto could stop them, sharp with a hunger he couldn't disguise. Jiraiya's expression flickered. I trained him. He was my student. Minato Namikaze. A pause. The fourth Hokage. The clearing went very quiet. Even the background clones stopped mid-kata. Naruto's brain went blank for about 3 seconds, then rebooted in a rush of connections. The fourth Hokage. Blonde hair, blue eyes, the greatest seal master of his generation. The man who'd sealed the Kyuubi into a newborn child on the night of the attack, into his own son. You, Naruto started. Stopped, started again. His voice came out steadier than he expected, probably because the emotions were too big and too many to fit into sound. He was my father. The fourth Hokage was my father, and he sealed the fox into me. Yes, and you trained him, which makes you your godfather. In theory. Jiraiya's mouth twisted. In practice, I've been the world's worst one. I know, you can yell at me later. Anko certainly will. Count on it, Anko said pleasantly. Naruto stared at the man who was his father's teacher and his own absent godfather and one of the strongest shinobi alive. The anger was there, a hot, bright coal in his chest that wanted to flare into a bonfire. 12 years alone. 12 years of empty apartments and cold stares, and not a single person who was supposed to be there actually being there. But there was also this. A man standing in front of him, guilt written plainly on his face, offering to help. Not forced, not ordered. Present, right now, in this clearing, because he'd chosen to come, Naruto had learned a long time ago that you could be angry and practical at the same time. Okay. He said, you can yell at you later is fine. What can you teach me? Jiraiya blinked. Then a slow, broad grin spread across his face, a grin that Naruto could see echoed in the man's every feature, open and unguarded and tinged with relief. Kid, I can teach you a lot. Starting with summoning. What followed was one of the more surreal experiences of Naruto's life, and his life had included being swallowed by a giant snake 48 hours ago, so the bar was high. Jiraiya produced a summoning scroll. Naruto signed it in blood. Jiraiya walked him through the hand signs and the chakra molding, which was less complicated than Naruto expected. Summoning was, at its core, a seal-based technique. And his Uzumaki affinity meant the underlying structure was transparent to him. Most people take weeks to get their first successful summon, Jiraiya said. The chakra cost is, Naruto bit his thumb, slammed his hand down, and poured chakra into the array. The clearing disappeared in smoke. When it cleared, Naruto was standing on top of a toad the size of a large dog, red and warty, with an expression of profound irritation. A medium summon on the first try, Jiraiya said faintly. Of course. This ain't bad, but it ain't Gamabunta. The toad said, craning its neck to look up at Naruto. You the new contractor. Yeah, I'm Naruto. Gamakichi, my old man's the boss toad. You want to meet him, you're gonna need a lot more chakra than that. I've got plenty of chakra. Yeah, prove it next time, I'm going home. Gamakichi vanished in a puff of smoke, and Naruto dropped 2 feet to the ground, landing in a crouch. Jiraiya was watching him with an expression that Naruto was starting to recognize. The same one Anko wore sometimes, a mixture of amazement and something that looked like grief for wasted time. Your father mastered summoning in 3 weeks, Jiraiya said. You just performed a successful summon in 3 minutes. The chakra cost alone should have, but you've got the reserves, and the seal affinity means you're not wasting energy fighting the technique's structure. He shook his head. Sensei told me what you did with Anko's curse mark. I didn't fully believe it until now. Believe it, Anko said from behind them, where she'd been leaning against a tree and watching with an expression of proprietary satisfaction. The kid's the real deal. Which is why I need your help with something. Jiraiya turned to her. Name it. The snake summoning contract. The amusement drained from Jiraiya's face. Explain. Anko pushed off the tree and walked to the center of the clearing. When Orochimaru was my teacher, he had me sign his snake summoning contract. After he defected, the summons became unreliable. The snakes answer to Orochimaru first. Some of them spy for him. I stopped using them years ago because I couldn't trust that every summon wasn't reporting back to him. And now you want to renegotiate. Now I want to sever and rebind. Cut ties with Orochimaru's contract snakes entirely and establish a new pact with wild serpents, ones that have no allegiance to him. It's theoretically possible. The snake summoning clans aren't monolithic. There are factions, wild broods that operate independently. Jiraiya rubbed his chin. It's possible. It's also dangerous. Severing a summoning contract is a seal-based operation. You'd need to rewrite the binding arrays while maintaining the spiritual connection to the snake realm. If you screw it up, you lose the summoning ability entirely. That's where Naruto comes in, Anko said. Both men looked at her. The summoning contract is a seal, a complex one, but a seal. And I've spent the last week watching this kid disassemble and rebuild seals like they're made of building blocks. She looked at Naruto. I'm not asking you to do it today, but I want you to study summoning contract architecture, understand how the binding works. And when you're ready, I want you to rewrite mine. Naruto looked at the summoning scroll Jiraiya had brought. With his Kagura Shingen active, the seal work was visible, layers of interlocking arrays that governed the spiritual connection between summoner and summon realm. It was more complex than anything he'd worked with so far, but the principles were the same, scaled up. I'll need to see your contract first, he said. Compare the architectures, but yeah, I think I can do it. There's no rush, Anko said, though the hunger in her eyes suggested otherwise. Having her own summons, truly her own, free of Orochimaru's taint, would be a reclamation of identity as significant as the curse mark's removal. Speaking of dangerous seal work, Jiraiya said, reaching into his Haori and producing a small scroll sealed with the Hokage's personal mark. Sensei asked me to give you this. It's a report from our intelligence division. He handed it to Anko, who broke the seal and scanned the contents. Her expression hardened as she read. What is it? Naruto asked. Anko's jaw worked for a moment before she spoke. Root activity. 4 operatives spotted in the village's east quarter over the past 3 days. That's Danzo's people. They don't normally operate that openly. He's watching us, Jiraiya said. It wasn't a guess. His tone carried the certainty of someone whose spy network extended into Konoha's own shadows. He's been watching since the preliminary round. My sources say he's had intelligence teams analyzing what happened with the curse mark removal. He's concerned. Good, Naruto said. Both adults looked at him. Let him be concerned. Let him watch. I'm not hiding what I can do. If he's got people walking around with seals that control them against their will, he should be worried. Jiraiya's eyebrows rose. That's a bold stance for a genin to take against a man who's been manipulating Konoha's politics for 40 years. It's the right stance. Anko said, and there was something fierce and proud in the way she said it. But bold doesn't mean stupid. We need to be aware of what Danzo might do even if we're not afraid of him. Agreed. Jiraiya folded his arms. For now, I'll handle the intelligence side. My network can keep tabs on Root's movements. Anko, you focus on the boy's combat training. And Naruto? He fixed the boy with a look that was equal parts serious and warm. You train like your life depends on it, because it does. Orochimaru doesn't take setbacks well, and you've set him back in a way no one has in years. I know, Naruto said. I'm ready. The three of them stood in the clearing as the morning sun crested the tree line, and for the first time in his life, Naruto felt like he had something he'd never had before. Not just allies, not just teachers, but people who were invested. People who showed up. It was, he decided, a good feeling. He intended to be worthy of it. The days that followed collapsed into a rhythm of exhaustion and exhilaration. Mornings were combat with Anko, taijutsu, weapons work, and increasingly, integration of seal techniques into live fighting. Anko's philosophy was simple. Any tool you couldn't use in combat was a tool you'd never use when it mattered. So Naruto learned to deploy barrier tags mid-dodge, to slap disruption seals onto opponents during grappling exchanges, to weave explosive arrays into the battlefield while retreating, turning his own ground into a minefield. Afternoons were split between summoning practice with Jiraiya and solo seal work with his clones. The summoning came fast. By day 10, he could reliably call mid-sized combat toads, and Jiraiya had started teaching him the tactical applications. The seal work came faster. The Uzumaki scrolls' intermediate chapters opened doors that Naruto hadn't known existed: containment arrays, chakra disruption fields, spatial anchoring tags that could pin a target to a specific point in space. Each technique built on the last, and with his clone army parallelizing the study, he was eating through material at a pace that left even Jiraiya shaking his head. His father was talented, Jiraiya told Anko one evening, watching Naruto's clones run through a complex array-linking exercise. But Minato learned sealing intellectually. He studied the theory, understood the math, built his technique through rigorous analysis. Naruto just knows. It's like watching someone speak their native language versus someone who learned it from a textbook. The fluency is different. It's the Uzumaki bloodline, Anko said. This is what they were. Before Uzushiagakure fell, the Uzumaki were the premier sealing clan in the world. Other villages destroyed them out of fear. This, she gestured at Naruto's clone groups, each working on different seal projects with focused intensity, is what they were afraid of. On the 14th day, 2 weeks into the training month, things escalated. Naruto was walking home from the training ground alone. Anko had a meeting with the Hokage. Jiraiya was running intelligence errands when someone fell into step beside him. The man was unremarkable. Average height, average build, dark hair cut short, wearing standard Konoha civilian clothes. Nothing about him stood out, which was, to Naruto's newly trained senses, the most remarkable thing about him. Real people had quirks, an uneven gait, a favored hand, tension in specific muscle groups. This man moved with a manufactured neutrality that screamed training root. Naruto kept walking. His Kagura Shingen was active, and beneath the man's civilian disguise, he could read the chakra signature clearly. It was strange, muted with an artificial flatness that suggested suppression or conditioning. And there was a seal, Naruto could feel it like a splinter under the skin, located on the man's tongue. A binding seal, something that restricted speech. Uzumaki Naruto, the man said. His voice was as unremarkable as the rest of him. I have a message from someone who admires your talents. Danzo. The man didn't react to the name, but a tiny spike in his chakra flow told Naruto everything he needed to know. A benefactor, the man corrected smoothly, who recognizes that your abilities are being wasted in standard genin assignments. Someone who could offer you resources, training, and protection far beyond what you're currently receiving. Naruto stopped walking. They were on a side street in the residential district, quiet at this hour. No witnesses, which was the point. Let me guess, Naruto said. I join Root, submit to Danzo's control, and become another one of his sealed-up puppets. He turned to face the man and didn't bother hiding the contempt. I can see the seal on your tongue, by the way, the one that stops you from talking about Root's operations. Is that the kind of protection you're offering? For the first time, the manufactured neutrality cracked. A flicker of something, surprise, maybe, or a very old pain, passed through the man's eyes before the blankness reasserted itself. You misunderstand the offer, the man said. No, I understand it fine. Go back to Danzo and tell him this. I'm not interested. Not now, not ever. And if he sends someone else, I'll remove that tongue seal of yours in public and let you tell everyone exactly what Root has been doing. The silence that followed was heavy. The Root agent stood very still, the stillness of someone running calculations behind a carefully empty expression. Then, without a word, he turned and walked away, vanishing around a corner with a subtlety that confirmed everything Naruto suspected about his training. Naruto waited until the chakra signature faded to nothing, then let out a slow breath. His hands weren't shaking, but his pulse was elevated. He just threatened one of the most dangerous men in Konoha, by proxy, through one of his operatives. The smart thing to do would be to second-guess himself, to wonder if he'd made an enemy he couldn't afford. But Naruto had seen the seal on that man's tongue. A binding seal, a cage built from chakra and kanji that stole a person's ability to speak freely. It was the curse mark all over again, a different flavor of the same fundamental evil. Using sealing arts to control and suppress another human being, he thought of Anko, 13 years enslaved by a mark she didn't choose. He thought of himself, 12 years defined by a seal that labeled him a monster. And he thought of the Root operative, walking through his own village with a padlock on his tongue, serving a master who'd stolen his autonomy and called it duty. No, he wasn't going to second-guess himself. Danzo could be as dangerous as he wanted. Naruto was going to tear down every cage he found. He told Anko about the encounter that evening. She listened without interrupting, her expression going colder and harder with each detail. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. He'll escalate. She said finally, that was a probe, a soft approach. When it doesn't work, he'll try leverage, threats, blackmail, political pressure. If those don't work, she trailed off, but the implication was clear. Let him try, Naruto said. That's the spirit, but let's be smart about it. She pulled out a blank scroll and started writing. From now on, you don't go anywhere alone without at least 3 shadow clones deployed as a perimeter. If Root agents approach again, you don't engage. You disengage and report to me or Jiraiya, and we document everything. Dates, times, locations, descriptions. If this goes political, and it will, we need a paper trail. Since when do you do paperwork? Since some idiot kid gave me a reason to care about the future. She said it casually, without looking up from the scroll, but Naruto caught the warmth underneath. 3 days later, on day 17, the snake summoning contract was ready. Naruto had spent every spare moment his clones could provide studying the architecture of summoning contracts, comparing the standard toad contract structure with what Anko described of her snake contract. The key insight had come on day 15. Summoning contracts weren't just seals. They were relationships, spiritual bonds encoded in chakra, with the seal serving as a medium for a deeper connection between summoner and summoned. Rewriting the contract wasn't a matter of changing the kanji. It was a matter of redirecting the spiritual bond itself. They did it at dawn, in the training clearing. Jiraiya was present, not to help directly, but to serve as a safety net. Anko sat cross-legged in the center of a circle Naruto had inscribed on the ground over the course of 2 hours, a complex array that incorporated elements from both the Toad summoning contract and Uzumaki barrier techniques. This is going to feel strange, Naruto warned her. He was kneeling across from her, hands positioned on the array's activation points. I'm going to sever the old bond first. You'll feel a disconnect, like losing a sense you've had for years. Then I'll establish the new link, targeting the wild serpent clans. They'll feel the offer and either accept or reject it. And if they reject, Then you lose the snake's summons entirely. Anko's jaw set. Do it. Naruto activated the array. The chakra flowed along the inscribed lines, and through his Kagura Shingen, Naruto watched the spiritual bond connecting Anko to the snake realm become visible. A thread of energy that extended from her chakra core outward into a dimension he could sense but not see. The thread was tainted. Dark streaks ran through it, carrying Orochimaru's influence, his claim of ownership. Every time Anko had summoned a snake through this bond, that taint had been there, a reminder, a leash. Naruto cut it. His chakra, laced with the golden heat of the Kyubai's power, sliced through the bond like a blade through rope. The severance was clean and total. On the spiritual level, something screamed, the contract snakes, suddenly disconnected, their link to a summoner terminated by force. Through the fading connection, Naruto sensed Orochimaru's personal summons, Manda and his kin, recoiling in outrage and confusion. Anko gasped. Her eyes went wide and her hands clenched on her knees. I feel it. It's gone. The connection is there's nothing. Not for long. Naruto shifted his focus to the second phase of the array. This was the delicate part, reaching through the severed link into the snake summoning realm, bypassing Orochimaru's contracted clans and finding the wild broods, the independent serpents who'd never bent the knee to any human summoner. He found them. Deep in the spiritual plane of the snake realm, far from the territories claimed by Manda's clan, there were others. Ancient serpents, massive and slow and proud, who had watched generations of human summoners come and go with predatory indifference. They felt his reaching chakra and stirred. Who calls? The voice, not audible, transmitted through the spiritual connection, was cold and vast and curious. Mitarashi Anko seeks a new pact, Naruto said, pushing the words through the array. She was bound to Orochimaru's snakes against her true will. That bond is severed. She offers a contract freely given, freely taken. No masters, no servants, partners. A long silence. Then amusement, deep and rumbling, and Uzumaki speaks for her. We remember the Uzumaki. Your clan dealt with us honestly when others used force and compulsion. For that memory, we will hear the woman. The array pulsed. New energy flowed through it, clean, powerful, untainted. A connection established itself between Anko and the wild serpent brood, fresh and bright, and Naruto felt the spiritual bond lock into place with a resonance that hummed through the entire array. Anko's eyes flew open. They were wide, bright, and for a moment, her mouth trembled before she clamped down on it with characteristic stubbornness. I can feel them, she whispered. They're different, bigger, older, and they're choosing to be here. Try a summon. Jiraiya said from the sideline, his voice carefully neutral but his eyes sharp with interest. Anko bit her thumb, ran through the signs, and slammed her palm to the ground. The snake that appeared was nothing like the summons she'd used before. It was a deep, iridescent blue-black, as thick around as a tree trunk and twice as long, with scales that shimmered like oil on water. Its head rose to Anko's height and regarded her with eyes like polished amber. I am Kuritsuji, the snake said. Its voice was a low vibration that Naruto felt in his chest. First son of the deep brood, you are the woman who broke free of the pale one's leash. Anko stood straight. No fear, no deference, meeting the great serpent's gaze as an equal, that's me. We have watched him, Orochimaru, with disgust. He treats our kind as tools, commands through dominance. You will not do this. No, I won't. Then we have an accord. Kuritsuji's massive head dipped, not a bow exactly, but an acknowledgement. Call and we will answer, but we answer as allies, not as weapons. He vanished. The smoke cleared, and Anko stood in the center of the array with her unmarked neck, her new summoning bond, and an expression that Naruto had never seen on an adult's face before. Freedom. Pure, uncomplicated freedom. Anko, he said. She turned to him, and for the second time since he'd known her, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. She blinked them back savagely and grinned instead, wide, fierce, unrestrained. Nice work, kid. Jiraiya caught Naruto's eye over Anko's shoulder and nodded once slowly. There was something in the old sage's expression that went beyond approval, a recognition, maybe, that what he was watching was not just a talented student, but something rarer. A force of change, a person around whom the world rearranged itself. The final 2 weeks of training intensified. Jiraiya began teaching Naruto the Rasengan, his father's signature technique. Given Naruto's seal affinity, the approach was different from what Jiraiya had originally planned. Instead of the standard 3-step learning process, rotation, power, containment, Naruto intuited the underlying structure of the technique by analyzing it with his Kagura Shingen when Jiraiya demonstrated it. "It's a seal," Naruto said, staring at the spinning sphere in Jiraiya's palm with his sensing ability fully active. Not written, but shaped. The chakra rotation creates a containment matrix in 3-dimensional space. It's the same principle as a barrier seal, but compressed into a sphere and maintained through constant rotational energy. Jiraiya stared at him. "It took your father 3 years to develop this technique, and you just described its fundamental operating principle in 10 seconds. I can see what it does. Doing it is different from seeing it." Naruto held up his hand and tried to generate the rotation. The chakra spiraled, wobbled, and collapsed. "See, the control requirements are insane. That's what the steps are for. Rotation first. No, I think there's a faster way. If I use a shadow clone to handle the containment layer while I handle the rotation and power." He created a clone, which immediately cupped its hands around Naruto's outstretched palm. Blue chakra spiraled, stabilized, compressed. The Rasengan formed, imperfect, slightly wobbly but unmistakably there, in about 4 seconds. "I'll refine it," Naruto said, looking at the spinning sphere with critical eyes. "The clone assist is a crutch, but it'll do for now. I can feel the shape I need to hold. Just need to build the control to hold it solo." By the end of the 2nd week, he could form the Rasengan without clone assistance. It was smaller than Jiraiya's, denser, and had an odd golden tinge from the trace Kyuubi chakra that laced through everything Naruto did. But it was complete, and when he drove it into a training boulder on day 25, the boulder didn't just crack, it disintegrated. "Okay," Jiraiya said, looking at the pile of gravel that had been a 3-ton rock. "That's more power than I expected." "The Kyuubi's chakra adds a corrosive element," Naruto said, examining his hand. "It eats through whatever the Rasengan hits on top of the rotational damage. I didn't plan that, it just happens." "Your father would be proud," Jiraiya said quietly. The words hit Naruto harder than he expected. He stood there, hand still raised, the dust from the destroyed boulder settling around him. And for a moment, the enormity of everything, his father, his heritage, the power he was growing into, the people who'd gathered around him, pressed against his chest like a physical weight. Then Anko's voice cut across the clearing. "That's great and all, but if you can't hit a moving target with it, it's just a pretty light show. Get over here, we're doing live drills." The weight lifted. Naruto grinned and jogged over to where Anko was waiting with a handful of smoke bombs, and the expression of someone who was about to make the next 2 hours extremely unpleasant for him. He wouldn't have it any other way. On the 28th day, 2 days before the Chunin exam finals, Kabuto Yakushi came to visit. It was evening. Naruto was alone in the training clearing, running through a final check of his equipment and seal supplies. His clones had been dismissed for the day, the accumulated knowledge settling into his brain like sediment in water. He was tired in the good way, the deep, satisfying exhaustion of a body and mind that had been pushed to their limits and expanded because of it. He felt Kabuto's approach before he saw it. The chakra signature was distinctive, smooth on the surface, with a medical precision to its flow, but underneath, something twisted. A wrongness that Naruto's Kagura Shingen flagged immediately. "Beautiful evening," Kabuto said, stepping into the clearing with his hands visible and his smile firmly in place. He pushed his glasses up his nose in that habitual gesture that Naruto had always found oddly artificial. "You've been busy, Naruto-kun." Naruto didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't tense. He stood easy, weight balanced, hands at his sides, and let his sensing ability map everything about the man in front of him. Kabuto's chakra was layered, multiple signatures coexisting in the same system, as if he'd absorbed or integrated foreign chakra from various sources. Medical jutsu, yes, but also something else, something that smelled to Naruto's senses like snake. "Kabuto," he said, "does Orochimaru know you're here, or is this freelance?" The smile didn't waver, but something behind Kabuto's eyes sharpened. "Direct, I like that. Most genin would still be pretending not to know what I am. Most genin can't feel Orochimaru's chakra woven through your system. You're practically marinating in it." Now the smile gained an edge. Kabuto adjusted his glasses again, a tell, Anko would have said, a self-soothing gesture disguised as habit. "Orochimaru-sama is curious about you, Naruto-kun, very curious. What you did to Anko's curse mark was supposed to be impossible. He's been studying curse seal architecture for decades. No one has ever managed a full extraction. Tell him to be more curious. It'll keep him up at night." Kabuto's head tilted slightly. "You're different from what the files suggest. The Academy reports paint you as loud, unfocused, and academically challenged, but that's not what I'm seeing. Maybe the files are wrong. Maybe the Academy was wrong. Or maybe everyone just stopped looking after they decided what I was. Perhaps." Kabuto took a step closer, casual, unthreatening, the practiced approach of an infiltrator testing boundaries. "Orochimaru-sama wanted me to deliver a message. He's impressed. The Uzumaki bloodline hasn't manifested this strongly in a generation. He believes you have extraordinary potential." "I don't care what he believes. You should, because his interest isn't idle, Naruto-kun. When Orochimaru-sama becomes interested in someone, he tends to pursue that interest with considerable focus." Another step closer. "He's also interested in the Uchiha boy, but between you and me, the things you can do with seals are far more valuable than the Sharingan. He may be reconsidering his priorities." The implication was clear. Orochimaru's target might be shifting, from Sasuke to Naruto, or perhaps to both. "Is that supposed to scare me?" Naruto asked. "It's supposed to inform you. What you do with the information is your business." Kabuto's smile turned genuine for a fraction of a second, an involuntary crack in the mask that revealed something almost like respect. "A word of advice, free of charge. The Chunin exam finals aren't what they appear to be. Prepare accordingly." He turned and walked toward the tree line. At the edge, he paused and looked back over his shoulder. "Oh, and Naruto-kun, that Rasengan of yours, the one with the golden tinge, Orochimaru-sama would very much like to see it up close. I suspect he'll get the chance." Then he was gone, vanishing into the shadows with the seamless skill of someone who'd been disappearing all his life. Naruto stood in the clearing and processed. Kabuto's visit was a message, a probe, and a warning rolled into one. Orochimaru was watching. Orochimaru was interested. And Orochimaru had plans for the exam finals that went beyond watching Genin fight. He thought about what Anko had told him on the first day of training. He's not here just for Sasuke. There's something bigger coming, something bigger. The finals. An audience full of dignitaries, a stadium packed with civilians, and the strongest shinobi in the village gathered in one place. If you wanted to hurt Konoha, really hurt it, that's where you do it. Naruto pulled out a blank scroll, sat down on the grass, and began drawing. Not seal arrays this time. Maps, the stadium layout, the surrounding streets, entry points, exit points, choke points, defensive positions. If something was coming, he was going to be ready. When Anko found him an hour later, the scroll was covered in tactical notations and deployment plans for barrier seals at every critical junction of the stadium. She looked at the scroll, looked at him, and for the third time in their acquaintance, her eyes went bright. "I'll get these to the Hawkage," she said, rolling up the scroll with careful hands. "And Naruto?" "Yeah, you're going to be okay. Better than okay. You're going to be something they've never seen coming. 2 days until the finals." Naruto went home, ate 3 bowls of ramen, and slept like the dead. He dreamed of spiraling seals and coiling snakes, and a father with his face, smiling at him from the other side of an impossible distance. Chapter 4. The crumbling leaf the morning of the Chunin exam finals broke clear and hot, the kind of summer day that turned Konoha's streets into shimmering rivers of heat by noon. The stadium was already filling when Naruto arrived at 7, 2 hours before the first match. He wanted to walk the grounds himself, check the seal placements, feel the space with his own senses before it filled with 10,000 civilians and 100 things that could go wrong. Anko had gotten his tactical scroll to the Hokage 3 days ago. Hiruzen had reviewed it, made modifications, and, to the quiet shock of several senior jounin, implemented a significant portion of Naruto's recommendations. Barrier tags at the stadium's structural weak points, sensor teams positioned at the entry gates. Anbu response squads staged in the surrounding blocks rather than concentrated inside the arena, where they'd be bottlenecked if something went sideways. The Hokage hadn't credited Naruto publicly. That was fine. Naruto didn't need credit. He needed the barriers to hold. He walked the stadium floor in the early light, hands in his pockets, Kagura Shingen active. The arena was a massive oval, open air, with tiered seating rising 30 meters on all sides. The cage box sat at the north end, elevated and partially enclosed. The Hokage seat, with space for visiting dignitaries. Today, the Kazekage of Tsunade would be sitting beside Hiruzen. Naruto's sensing ability swept the stadium in slow arcs. He could feel the barrier tags he'd designed humming at their anchor points, dormant, waiting for activation. He could feel the Anbu in the walls, their chakra signatures muted but present. He could feel the early arriving spectators trickling in through the gates, civilian signatures like candle flames compared to the bonfires of the shinobi around them, and underneath it all, at the very edge of his range, something else. A wrongness. Faint, distributed, like a bad smell carried on shifting wind, there and then gone, impossible to pin down. Foreign chakra signatures that didn't belong, hidden under layers of suppression and disguise, they were already here. Whoever they were, whatever Orochimaru had planned, the pieces were already on the board. "You feel it too," Anko said from behind him. She dropped from the competitor's entrance, landing silently on the arena floor. She was dressed for combat. Mesh armor under her trench coat, weapons pouch heavy on her hip, her new snake summoning tattoo visible on her left forearm where she'd pushed up her sleeves. The skin on her neck was clean and unmarked, and she moved with a looseness, an ease, that still made Naruto do a double take every time he saw it, like watching someone walk without a limp after years of favoring an injured leg. "Scattered signatures," Naruto said. "Suppressed. I can't get a fix on individuals, but there's maybe 40, 50 mixed into the crowd and the surrounding blocks." "Sound and sand," Anko confirmed. Jiraiya's intelligence network identified infiltration teams entering the village over the past week. Small groups, traveling as merchants and tourists. His estimate is closer to 100, with more staged outside the walls. 100. Naruto let that number settle. 100 enemy shinobi mixed into a crowd of 10,000 civilians, with more outside the gates. Not an assassination, an invasion. When? Best guess is during the finals, when everyone's watching the matches and the Hokage is in the open. The signal will be some kind of wide-area genjutsu to knock out the civilians, keeps them out of the way, and creates chaos. Then the assault teams hit military targets while Orochimaru goes for the Hokage personally. Naruto looked up at the cage box. The Kazekage. Almost certainly Orochimaru in disguise, or under his control. Jiraiya hasn't confirmed which. So the old man is going to be sitting next to his own assassin. He knows. We've briefed him. The plan is to let it start. We can't expose Orochimaru's disguise without tipping off the infiltration teams, and if they scatter into the civilian population, we'll have a bloodbath. Better to let them commit, spring the trap when they're exposed, and contain them. Contain them with my barriers. Your barriers, Anbu response teams, and every combat-ready shinobi in the village. You did good work, Naruto. The containment plan is solid. She put a hand on his shoulder. But that's the big picture. Your job today is smaller and more important, the matches. one match in particular. Your fight with Neji Hyuga is first. Win it and win it decisively. Show the village what you are after that. She glanced toward the stadium entrance where, distantly, the sound of the gathering crowd was building. When the invasion starts, you and I fight together. That's the deal. You don't go solo, I don't go solo, we watch each other's backs. Deal. She squeezed his shoulder once, hard, then dropped her hand. Go get ready, I'll be in the stands. Naruto watched her go. Then he turned back to the empty arena, closed his eyes, and breathed. 1 month ago, he'd been the dead last. The class clown. The kid nobody believed in, carrying a fox in his gut, and a chip on his shoulder the size of Fire Country. Now he was standing in the center of the biggest stage in Konoha with seal arrays woven into the walls, a Rasengan in his arsenal, a summoning contract in his blood, and 2 of the most dangerous people in the village in his corner. He opened his eyes. Time to show them. The stadium was a wall of noise by the time the competitors lined up on the arena floor. 10,000 people packed the stands, a sea of faces and colors, and sound that hit like a physical force. Naruto stood in the line of finalists and let the noise wash over him. To his left, Neji Hyuga stood with his arms crossed, radiating the particular brand of cold disdain that the Hyuga clan had apparently perfected over generations. His Byakugan eyes were pale and flat, fixed on the middle distance, already dismissing everything around him as beneath his attention. To his right, Sasuke's spot was empty. Late. Naruto felt a flicker of irritation. Kakashi's chronic tardiness was apparently contagious, but pushed it aside. Sasuke's problems were Sasuke's problems. Naruto had tried to help. The offer stood. Beyond that, he couldn't force it. Further down the line, Gaara of the Sand stood motionless, his gourd on his back, his eyes flat and dead. Naruto's Kagura Shingen picked up the Jinchuriki's signature from 15 meters away, and it was screaming. Not Gaara himself, the thing inside him. A massive, unstable, churning presence that felt like standing next to a reactor on the verge of meltdown. Whatever seal the Sand Village had used on their Jinchuriki, it was failing, or had already failed. Naruto filed that information away and focused. The proctor for the finals was a jounin named Genma Shiranui, a laid-back man with a senbon perpetually clenched between his teeth. He announced the first match with the casual authority of someone who'd seen enough violence to be bored by it. First match, Uzumaki Naruto versus Hyuga Neji. Combatants to the floor, everyone else clear out. The other finalists filed up to the competitor's box. Naruto and Neji faced each other across 10 meters of packed earth. The crowd's noise shifted, a murmur of anticipation layered with something else. Skepticism. Naruto could feel it in the way the sound tilted, the undertone of expectation that this would be quick. The Hyuga prodigy versus the dead last. Everyone knew how this story went. Neji confirmed it. You should forfeit, he said, his voice carrying clearly in the sudden hush. Fate has already decided the outcome of this match. A failure cannot defeat a genius. It is the natural order. Naruto looked at him. Really looked, with everything he had. Normal eyes, Kagura Shingen, the combat awareness Anko had drilled into him over 30 days of brutal training. He saw the Byakugan's latent power behind those pale eyes. The gentle fist, stance already forming in the subtle positioning of Neji's feet and hands. The absolute, unshakable confidence of someone who had never been seriously challenged. And he saw the cage, not a metaphor, an actual seal. The caged bird seal on Neji's forehead, hidden by his headband. Naruto's Kagura Shingen read it like a neon sign, a control seal, punitive in design, that allowed the Hyuga main branch to cause debilitating pain to any branch member who stepped out of line. It was elegant in its cruelty. A leash made of chakra and kanji, branded onto children. Naruto looked at the caged bird seal, and something cold and furious settled into his chest. Another cage. Another leash. Another person walking around with someone else's chains on them and calling it fate because the alternative, admitting you'd been owned, was too painful to face. Fate, Naruto said. That's what you're going with? It is the truth. Some are born with talent, others are born without it. No amount of effort changes what you fundamentally are. Is that what the seal on your forehead tells you? The arena went dead silent. Neji's expression cracked, a hairline fracture in the marble composure, there and gone so fast that most people would have missed it, but Naruto saw it. And more importantly, in the stands, dozens of Hyuga clan members went rigid. "You don't know what you're talking about," Neji said, and his voice had gone quiet in a way that was more dangerous than shouting. "I know a cage when I see one. I've been breaking them lately." Naruto settled into his stance, low, loose, weight-balanced, Anko's stance. "So let's skip the philosophy lesson. You want to prove fate's real? Come prove it." Genma looked between them, Senbin twitching. "Begin." Neji came fast, faster than Kiba, faster than anyone Naruto had faced in the prelims. The gentle fist style was beautiful in its lethality. Each strike designed to target Tenketsu points, shutting down the chakra network one node at a time. A single clean hit could disable an arm. A combination could shut down the entire system. Naruto didn't let him land a clean hit. He moved the way Anko had taught him, not backward, not defensively, but laterally, circling, staying off the center line where the gentle fist was most dangerous. Neji's strikes whispered past him by centimeters, and each miss forced the Hyuga to extend, to adjust, to chase. The Byakugan gave Neji near 360-degree vision, which meant Naruto couldn't rely on blind spots. But vision wasn't the same as reaction speed, and Anko had spent 3 weeks teaching Naruto how to be faster than his opponent's ability to process what they were seeing. "You're dodging," Neji said, pressing forward with a rapid combination that would have shut down both of Naruto's arms if it landed. "Running? Is that your answer to fate?" Naruto ducked the last strike, planted his hand on the ground, and pivoted into a spinning kick that caught Neji across the ribs. It wasn't a devastating blow. The Hyuga's conditioning was excellent, but it was contact, the first clean hit of the match, and it sent Neji sliding back 2 meters with a look of genuine surprise. "That's not running," Naruto said. "That's positioning." The crowd's murmur had changed. The skepticism was eroding, replaced by an electric uncertainty. The dead last was matching the Hyuga prodigy, and not through tricks or clones, but through fundamental combat skill. Neji reset. His expression hardened. The surprise drained away, replaced by cold determination, and Naruto saw the shift in his stance, a widening of the base, a settling of weight. Neji was done testing. He was going serious. 8 trigrams, 64 palms. The attack was legendary. A progressive combination that doubled with each iteration. 2 strikes, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, each one targeting a specific Tenketsu point with surgical precision. At full speed, it was nearly impossible to evade. The Byakugan tracked the target's movements and adjusted in real time, and the sheer volume of strikes created an overlapping kill zone that left nowhere to go. Nearly impossible. Naruto had spent 30 days training with a woman whose combat philosophy was built on surviving impossible situations. He'd also spent 30 days developing his sealing abilities to a level that nobody in this stadium expected. As Neji launched forward into the 64 palms, Naruto slapped both hands together. The seal array he'd inscribed on his own palms that morning, a modification of his reflection barrier, miniaturized and inverted, activated. A skin-tight shell of chakra wrapped around his body, so thin it was invisible to normal eyes, but blazing like a bonfire to anyone with chakra sensing. Neji's first 2 strikes hit the shell and bounced. The gentle fist's chakra projections, designed to penetrate into the Tenketsu, met the barrier and reflected backward into Neji's own hands. The Hyuga's eyes went wide. The Byakugan could see the barrier now, a shimmering skin of compressed chakra covering Naruto's body like armor, but momentum was momentum. Neji couldn't stop the combination mid-execution, and each strike that landed reflected more of his own chakra back into his arms. By the 32nd strike, his hands were shaking. By the 64th, he stumbled back with his arms hanging at his sides, his own tenketsu disrupted by the reflected energy. The stadium was silent. Naruto dropped the barrier. It was expensive, even with his reserves. Maintaining it under that kind of assault had cost him, but the effect was worth every drop of chakra. Neji stood across from him, pale-faced, arms trembling, his Byakugan wide and staring. "What?" Neji breathed. "Was that?" "A seal. My own design." Turns an attacker's energy back on them. Naruto straightened. "The gentle fist is incredible, Neji. Best taijutsu style I've ever seen. But it's all about projecting chakra into someone else's system, and that means it can be redirected." "Impossible. No genin can create. I'm in Uzumaki." "Seals are what we do." He took a step forward. "And I'm not done." He formed the cross-shaped hand sign. 20 shadow clones materialized across the arena, and they weren't the sloppy, uncoordinated mobs he'd used in the academy. They moved in formation. 4 groups of 5, flanking, cutting angles, herding. Anko's tactical philosophy applied to shadow clone warfare. Neji fought them. He was brilliant, even with his arms compromised. His chitin, a desperate spinning defense that expelled chakra from every tenketsu simultaneously, destroyed the first wave. But each clone that got close slapped a disruption seal onto the ground before it popped. And by the time Neji had cleared the second wave, the arena floor around him was studded with active seal tags that were dampening his chakra output. The third wave pinned him. 4 clones grabbed his limbs while the 5th placed a suppression seal on his chest. Not painful, not permanent, just a localized dampener that reduced his chakra to a trickle. Naruto dismissed the clones and walked forward to where Neji lay on the arena floor, breathing hard, his Byakugan deactivated by the suppression field. The Hyuga prodigy stared up at him with an expression that had moved past surprise into something rawer and more vulnerable. "Fate, huh?" Naruto said. He wasn't gloating. His voice was quiet, just between them under the stadium noise. He crouched beside Neji and lowered his voice further. "I can see the seal on your forehead, the caged bird. I know what it does, and I can remove it." Neji's entire body went still. "Not today." "Not here, but the offer's open. Anytime you want that thing off your head, you come find me." He held Neji's gaze. "Because that's your fate, Neji, not the one they branded on you, the one you choose." He stood and turned to Genma, who was watching with the senbon hanging loose in his slightly open mouth. "I think that's a win," Naruto said. Genma blinked, looked at Neji, flat on his back in a field of seal tags, looked at Naruto, standing easy, barely winded. "Winner, Uzumaki Naruto." The stadium erupted. The sound was like nothing Naruto had experienced, a physical wall of noise, cheering and shouting and the stamping of feet that made the arena floor vibrate. He stood in the center of it and let it wash over him, and somewhere in the chaos, he found Anko's face in the crowd. She was on her feet, grinning, fist raised. Not cheering. She wasn't the cheering type, but present, visible, proud. In the cage box, the Hokage's expression was complicated, pride and worry and something that looked like a very old grief finally beginning to heal. Beside him, the Kazekage sat in perfect stillness, and Naruto's Kagura Shingen, even at this distance, picked up the wrongness coiled inside that official robe. Not sand. Not wind. Snake, soon, Naruto thought. You're going to make your move soon, and we're going to be ready. He walked off the arena floor and up to the competitor's box, where the other finalists were waiting with expressions ranging from calculating, Shikamaru, to bloodthirsty Gaara, whose flat, dead eyes had gained a flicker of terrible interest, to stunned everyone else. Shikamaru fell into step beside him. "Troublesome," the Nara said, which from Shikamaru could mean anything from nice weather to the world is ending. In this case, it seemed to mean something closer to. "You were hiding a lot more than anyone realized, and now I have to recalculate everything, which is a drag." "Problems?" Naruto asked. "Just updating my mental files. You went from unpredictable loudmouth to extremely dangerous unpredictable loudmouth in about 4 minutes." Shikamaru's eyes were sharp behind the lazy facade. "Those seals, you made them yourself." "Yeah, The reflection barrier, original design. The disruption field tags, modified from standard issue, tripled the suppression radius and added a chakra dampening layer. Shikamaru stared at him for a long moment, then sighed. Man, and I thought Sasuke was going to be the one to watch. He slouched against the railing. Please tell me you're not fighting me next. Depends on the bracket. I'm going to forfeit if I draw you, just so you know. Life's too short. The next matches proceeded. Kenkuro forfeited against Shino without explanation. Suspicious, given the invasion intelligence. Shikamaru fought Temari in a match that was less a combat and more a chess game, ending in Shikamaru's voluntary surrender after he'd already proven he could win. Classic Nara. Then the board lit up for Sasuke's match and the stadium held its breath. 5 minutes passed. 10. The crowd grew restless. Genma looked up at the cage box for guidance. The Hokage and the Kazekage exchanged words. Another 5 minutes. Then a swirl of leaves in the center of the arena, and Kakashi appeared with Sasuke beside him. Fashionably late to a degree that bordered on contempt, Sasuke looked different, leaner, harder, with a coiled tension that spoke of intensive training. But Naruto's eyes went straight to his neck, where the curse mark sat like a bruise under the collar of his shirt. With the Kegura Shingen, the picture was worse. The root system had grown significantly in the past month. Without the suppression Seal Kakashi had placed, which Naruto could see layered over the mark, a containment effort that was already failing, the curse mark's integration with Sasuke's chakra network would be nearly total. Kakashi had tried to contain it. Just like the Seal Masters had tried to contain Anko's. Suppression, not extraction. Managing the symptoms while the disease spread, Naruto watched Sasuke walk to the arena floor to face Gaara, and the familiar frustration tightened in his chest. He could fix this. He could feel the cure in his hands, in his blood, in the Uzumaki gift that had freed Anko from 13 years of slavery. But you couldn't save someone who wouldn't let you. The match between Sasuke and Gaara was violent from the first second. Sasuke's new speed, impressive, clearly the result of a month of intensive taijutsu training with Lee's style as a template, let him penetrate Gaara's sand defense. The Chidori, Kakashi's signature technique and Sasuke's new toy, punched through Gaara's sand armor and drew blood for the first time in the sand Jinchuriki's life. Gaara screamed. And then everything went wrong. Naruto felt it before he heard it, a massive genjutsu wave rolling through the stadium like a silent tsunami. The civilian spectators dropped where they sat, slumping into artificial sleep. The weaker genin followed. The wave passed over Naruto and broke against his chakra reserves like surf on a cliff. His sheer volume of chakra made him functionally immune to area effect genjutsu. Kai, he muttered anyway, disrupting the technique for good measure. Around the stadium, the infiltration teams threw off their disguises. Sound and sand shinobi erupted from the crowd, from the walls, from the access tunnels. Explosions rocked the northern gate, diversionary attacks, designed to pull response teams away from the stadium. In the cage box, the Kazekage grabbed Hiruzen and leaped to the stadium roof. The disguise fell away in midair, revealing the pale face and golden eyes of Orochimaru. 4 sound shinobi, his personal guard, materialized at the roof's corners and raised a barrier jutsu, sealing Orochimaru and the Hokage inside a box of purple flame. It was happening. Exactly as predicted. Exactly as planned for, Naruto didn't hesitate. He vaulted the competitor's box railing and landed on the arena floor. Around him, the world had become a war zone, sound and sand shinobi clashing with Konoha defenders. Civilians slumped in their seats, smoke and fire, and the crack of jutsu on all sides. The barrier tags he'd placed throughout the stadium were activating, his defensive arrays boxing in clusters of enemy fighters and creating choke points that favored the defending forces. Anko landed beside him. She'd come off the stands like a missile, trench coat flaring behind her. There was blood on her face, not hers, and a kunai in each hand. Behind her, the massive blue-black form of Kuritsuji materialized in a burst of smoke, the great serpent's amber eyes sweeping the chaos with predatory calm. "Gaara's gone," Anko said, cutting through the noise with clipped efficiency. His siblings pulled him out when the genjutsu hit. They're heading for the forest, the western wall. "We've got 3 sound jounin incoming from the south tunnel and Orochimaru's on the roof with the Hokage." Naruto's eyes went to the rooftop barrier. Inside it, he could feel 2 massive chakra signatures clashing, Hiruzen's deep and steady, Orochimaru's cold and vast. The barrier itself was formidable, radiating a heat that his Kagura Shingen registered as lethal. "The roof first," he said. "I can break that barrier." Anko shook her head. "The old man has a plan for Orochimaru. We briefed it 2 days ago. He's got a sealing jutsu prepared, something final. He told me specifically not to intervene. That sealing jutsu is going to kill him." The words came out flat and certain because Naruto knew. He'd felt the shape of the technique Hiruzen had been preparing. His Kagura Shingen had picked up the resonance during their last meeting. It was a summoning-based soul seal, a technique that traded the caster's life for the target's soul. A dead man's switch. The Hokage was planning to take Orochimaru with him. Anko's expression told him she knew too. "He chose this, Naruto. He chose wrong." Naruto looked at the barrier again. His mind was racing, but not with panic, with calculation. Anko's training, Jiraiya's teaching, a month of intensive growth compressing into this single moment of crisis. The barrier has 4 anchor points, the 4 sound ninja at the corners. It's a linked array. Remove 1 anchor and the whole thing collapses. Those 4 are jounin level. And the barrier itself is lethal to anyone who touches it. "I don't need to touch it. I need to disrupt 1 anchor point from the outside." He was already pulling seal tags from his pouch, the disruption arrays he'd perfected during training, modified in his mind even as he held them. "Kuretsuji can get me to roof level. I place a disruption field on 1 corner, the barrier drops, and you go in." Anko stared at him, then at the roof, then back at him. The calculation behind her eyes was instant and brutal. Risk, reward, probability, the cold math of combat decision-making. "I go in and do what? Fight Orochimaru?" A month ago, that question would have been tinged with the old fear, the old helplessness. Now it was purely tactical. You disrupt his fight with the Hokage. You don't need to beat him, you need to change the equation. If the old man isn't fighting alone, he doesn't need the suicide jutsu. Buy time, and I'll join you after I deal with Gaara. Gaara. He's a Jinchuriki with a broken seal. If he fully transforms inside the village, the casualty count goes through the roof. I need to stop him before that happens. You want to split up? I want to cover both threats. You're the only person here who can face Orochimaru and survive, and I'm the only person here who can stop a Jinchuriki transformation. The logic was sound, and they both knew it. Anko's jaw worked, her instinct to protect him warring with the tactical reality. "Kuretsuji," she said, and the great snake lowered his head to her level. "Get him to the roof, then come back for me." "As you wish." Naruto leaped onto the serpent's head. Kuretsuji surged upward, his massive body coiling around the stadium's exterior wall, rising toward the rooftop with a speed that belied his size. Wind tore at Naruto's face, and the sounds of battle fell away below as the snake climbed. The barrier was ahead, a translucent purple box sitting on the stadium roof, flames licking along its edges. Inside, Naruto could see the fight. Hiruzen had shed his Hokage robes and was battling in his combat armor, staff in hand, facing Orochimaru with a ferocity that belied his age. But the snake Sanin was pressing him hard, and Naruto could see, could feel, the old man reaching for that final technique. The summoning seal. The death seal. Not yet. Not if Naruto could help it. Kuretsuji brought him level with the northeast corner of the barrier. The sound ninja maintaining it, a large man with 6 arms and the focused expression of someone channeling a complex jutsu, didn't see him coming. His attention was inward, on the barrier. Naruto slapped the disruption seal onto the roof tiles 3 feet from the anchor point. The effect was instantaneous. The disruption field radiated outward, hitting the sound ninja's chakra flow like a wrench thrown into gears. The man's concentration shattered. His corner of the barrier flickered, destabilized, and the entire structure shuddered like a soap bubble in wind. What? The six-armed ninja started. Naruto hit him with a Rasengan. He didn't hold back. The golden-tinged sphere drove into the man's chest, and the rotational force, augmented by the Kyubai's corrosive chakra, sent him flying off the roof in a spiral of displaced air. The barrier corner collapsed. The entire structure wavered, the remaining three sound ninjas straining to compensate, and for 3 critical seconds, a gap opened in the purple flame wall. Anko came through it like a bolt from a crossbow. She'd ridden Kuretsuji back up while Naruto dealt with the anchor point, and she dove through the gap in the barrier with a kunai in each hand and 13 years of repressed fury in her eyes. Not blind rage, cold, channeled, precise fury. The fury of a woman facing the man who'd marked her as property and doing it on her own terms. Orochimaru saw her coming. His golden eyes widened, not in fear, but in genuine surprise. Anko, but the curse mark, her kunai caught him across the cheek. He dodged the killing strike, but the blade opened a shallow cut, and Anko was already pressing, flowing from the thrown kunai into a taijutsu combination that drove the Sanin backward. Gone, she said, and her voice was steady and savage and free. Gone forever. Someone better than you ripped it out. The 3 remaining sound ninjas scrambled to close the barrier, and Naruto felt the gap sealing shut. Anko was inside now, committed. But so was the Hokage, and between the two of them, the barrier reformed. Naruto was outside it, Anko and Hiruzen inside with Orochimaru. He could feel the fight intensifying, 3 signatures clashing in the sealed space, the old man's careful sealing jutsu abandoned in favor of direct combat now that he had support. Naruto turned west. Gaara, Kuretsuji, was waiting. The sand-bearer fled toward the forest. I can feel his summons. Shukaku stirs. Get me there. The great snake descended the stadium wall at terrifying speed, and Naruto leaped from his head as they hit ground level, already running. Behind him, the stadium was a hell of combat. Konoha shinobi fighting sound and sand invaders in the streets, the barrier tags creating a patchwork of defensive zones that channeled the battle away from civilian areas. His plan was working. Not perfectly, but well enough. He hit the western wall and went over it without slowing, chakra-boosting his jump to clear the 20-meter fortification in a single bound. The forest spread out below him, and Gaara's signature was a lighthouse in the dark. Massive, unstable, growing, he landed running. Trees blurred past. Gaara's chakra was maybe half a mile ahead, moving erratically, and the signature was transforming. The human layer was thinning, the Biju layer expanding, and the seal, that broken, failing seal, was cracking further with every second. Shukaku was waking up. Naruto found them in a clearing. Temari and Kankuro were flanking their brother, their expressions torn between duty and terror. Gaara was on his knees in the center of the clearing, and the transformation was already advanced, sand encasing the right side of his body in a grotesque partial form, one arm massive and clawed, one eye yellow and diamond-shaped. The human half of his face was contorted in pain, and something that Naruto recognized with a lurch of empathy as pure fear. The monster was winning. Gaara was losing himself. Get away from him, Naruto said, and Temari and Kankuro spun toward him, weapons ready. He ignored them. His Kagura Shingon was locked onto Gaara's seal, reading its architecture with desperate focus. The seal was bad, not incompetent, but incomplete. Whoever had designed it had prioritized the village's safety over the Jinchuriki's stability, creating a containment that suppressed Shukaku's power, but did nothing to protect Gaara's mind from the Biju's influence. It was a cage for the beast and an open window for the madness. No wonder Gaara was the way he was. They'd sealed a demon inside him and left his psyche unshielded. Gaara, Naruto called. Look at me, the one human eye focused. Recognition. They'd felt each other during Gaara's fight with Sasuke, 2 Jinchuriki in proximity, a resonance neither of them could ignore. Uzumaki, Gaara rasped. The sand arm flexed, massive claws gouging the earth. Stay back. Mother is she's hungry. That's not your mother. It's a biju, and your seal is broken. Naruto took a step forward. Temari moved to block him, and he looked at her. I can fix his seal. I can stop the transformation, but I need to get close. Like hell, Kankuro said. You're a leaf shinobi. Your village is. My village is being invaded by yours, yeah. We can talk about that later. Right now, your brother is about to fully transform into a one-tailed biju in the middle of a forest half a mile from a populated city, and if that happens, everyone dies. Your people and mine, so back off and let me work. Temari looked at Kankuro. Kankuro looked at Gaara, who was losing more ground by the second, the sand creeping across his chest, his human eye flickering between green and gold. Then she stepped aside. Naruto crossed the distance. The sand surged toward him defensively, Gaara's automatic protection, triggered by proximity, and he countered with a burst of chakra-laced wind that scattered it long enough to get within arm's reach. He grabbed Gaara's human shoulder, the one not yet consumed by sand, and pushed his Kagura Shingen to its limit. The seal was a disaster. Cracks ran through its foundation like a shattered window. Shukaku's chakra was pouring through those cracks, flooding Gaara's system, drowning his consciousness. The seal's original architect had built the equivalent of a dam across a river, but the dam was eroding and there was nothing behind it. Naruto couldn't rebuild the seal. Not here, not in seconds, not with Shukaku actively fighting him, but he could do something else. He could reinforce the dam. Patch the cracks. Buy time. He pressed his palm flat against the seal on Gaara's abdomen and channeled his chakra, Uzumaki chakra, dense and precise, laced with the golden warmth of the Kyuubi's power. The fox's energy met Shukaku's, and there was a moment of communion between two ancient forces, not friendly, but recognizing. An acknowledgement between beings of the same nature. Then Naruto's seal sense took over. He worked fast, brutal, his chakra filling the cracks in Gaara's seal like mortar in broken masonry. Not elegant, not permanent, but solid, a patch job that reinforced the containment and, crucially, added a layer of insulation between Shukaku's consciousness and Gaara's. The sand stopped spreading. Gaara screamed, a sound of confusion and relief and rage that echoed through the trees, and the transformation began to reverse. The sand arm crumbled. The yellow eye faded to green. The monstrous partial form collapsed into dust, and Gaara slumped forward, and Naruto caught him. The red-haired boy weighed almost nothing. He was shaking, his breathing ragged, his chakra signature still turbulent but stabilizing. The patched seal held. "What did you do?" Gaara whispered. His voice was raw, stripped of the flat menace that had characterized him throughout the exams. Without the constant pressure of Shukaku's madness bleeding through his broken seal, he sounded like what he was, a scared, exhausted 15-year-old. Fixed your seal. Temporarily. The permanent repair is going to take time and better conditions than a forest floor. Naruto set Gaara down carefully. But the voice should be quieter now, the one that tells you to kill. It's not gone, but it's muffled. Gaara's eyes were wide. I can think. I haven't been able to think clearly in. His hands came up to his head, pressing against his temples, and Naruto saw the tremor in them. How long does the repair last? Weeks, maybe. A month if you don't push it. After that, I'll need to do a full reconstruction. Come to Konoha when this is over. I'll fix it properly. Temari and Kankuro were staring. Their brother, the monster, the weapon, the thing their own village feared more than loved, was sitting in the dirt, talking coherently, without the sand shield up, without the killing intent that had been his constant companion since childhood. He looked small and young and human. Why? Temari asked. The question was aimed at Naruto, and it carried years of confusion and grief and the particular desperation of a sister who'd watched her brother disappear into something terrible. Why help him? We're your enemies. Your soldiers following orders. Gaara's a Jinchuriki with a broken seal. I'm a Jinchuriki who knows what that's like. Naruto stood. The invasion is over whether you know it yet or not. Take your brother and go. When the ceasefire comes, and it will, bring him to me." He didn't wait for a response. He turned and ran back toward the village, because inside that barrier on the stadium roof, Anko was fighting the most dangerous man alive, and every second counted. He covered the half-mile to the wall in under a minute, Kuretsuji meeting him at the gate and carrying him up and over in a single fluid motion. The streets were calmer now. The invasion's momentum had broken against Konoha's prepared defenses, and pockets of sound and sand fighters were being systematically contained by Anbu and Jounin response teams. The barrier tags had done their job, boxing in enemy squads and creating kill zones that the defenders exploited ruthlessly. The stadium roof. The barrier was still up. 3 corners now, the remaining sound ninja maintaining a triangular containment that was smaller and less stable than the original, but still lethal. Inside, the fight had changed. Naruto felt it as he scaled the stadium wall. 3 signatures still clashed, but the dynamics had shifted. Hiruzen's was steady, pained, diminished, but controlled. Orochimaru's was fluctuating, frustration, exertion, and something Naruto hadn't expected. Chapter 5. The weight of names. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and grief. Naruto sat in a hard plastic chair outside the intensive care ward, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. The tiles were white with gray flecks. He'd been staring at them long enough to memorize the pattern. 3 hours since the invasion ended. 2 hours since they'd brought the Hokage in on a stretcher, his body broken but breathing. 1 hour since the medics had stopped rushing in and out and started speaking in the low, measured tones that meant the immediate crisis had passed, but nobody wanted to promise anything. Hiruzen Sarutobi was alive. Barely. Anko's intervention had changed the calculus on the rooftop. When Naruto had dropped the barrier corner and she'd come through like a blade, Orochimaru had been forced to fight on 2 fronts. The Hokage's sealing jutsu preparations and Anko's relentless close-quarters assault. The snake Sanin was stronger than both of them, but strength wasn't everything when you were being pressed from 2 angles by opponents who refused to give you room to breathe. Hiruzen had still used the Reaper Death Seal. That was the part that burned. Even with Anko's support, the old man had judged Orochimaru too dangerous to leave intact, and he'd initiated the forbidden summoning technique that called the Shinigami itself. But Anko's presence had disrupted Orochimaru's counterattack at the critical moment. A snake summon that would have killed the Hokage before he completed the seal was intercepted by Kuretsuji, who'd smashed through the weakened barrier wall and taken the strike meant for Hiruzen. The result, the Reaper Death Seal activated but incompletely. Instead of taking Orochimaru's soul entirely, it had claimed his arms, both of them sealed away by the Shinigami's grasp, rendered dead and useless. The cost to Hiruzen was severe but not fatal. The death god had taken payment in flesh and chakra rather than life, leaving the old man shattered but still breathing. Orochimaru had fled. Armless, screaming with rage, his personal guard carrying him as they retreated through a reverse summoning. The barrier collapsed. The invasion's backbone broke, but the Hokage was in intensive care, and nobody would tell Naruto if he was going to wake up. Anko dropped into the chair beside him. She moved stiffly. Her left arm was in a sling, 3 ribs cracked, a shallow sword wound across her thigh that the medics had closed but hadn't fully healed. She'd refused to stay in her own hospital bed after 30 minutes. "He's stable," she said. "They told you that." "I told them that if they didn't start giving me real information, instead of we're doing everything we can, I was going to start doing everything I could, which would involve considerably more property damage." She leaned back in the chair and winced. "He's stable, Naruto." The death seal took a lot out of him, but his vitals are holding. The medics are saying days, not hours. Days until what? Until they know more. That's the honest answer. The Reaper Death Seal isn't a medical condition, it's a spiritual one. His body is intact. His soul is damaged. Partially torn, the Shinigami took its price. Naruto's hands clenched on his knees. If I'd been faster, if I'd broken the barrier sooner, then he would have used the seal anyway. Anko's voice was firm, not gentle. She didn't do gentle, she did honest, which was better. I was in there with him, Naruto. I saw his face when he started the technique. He'd already decided, before I got there, before the invasion started, he'd already chosen to die fighting Orochimaru. He didn't have to. No, he didn't. And because of what you did, the barrier disruption, giving me the opening, he didn't die. He's alive because of you, that's not nothing. Naruto said nothing. The tiles blurred slightly and he blinked it away. They sat in silence for a while. The hospital corridor was busy around them. Medics rushing between wards. Shinobi being triaged, the organized chaos of a village counting its wounded. The invasion had been contained faster than anyone expected, thanks in large part to Naruto's barrier deployment and the prepared defensive response. But contained didn't mean painless. The casualty lists were still being compiled. Naruto had seen stretchers going in both directions, some to treatment, some to the morgue. Council's meeting, Anko said eventually. Emergency session. They're going to address the succession question. Succession? Hokage succession. Hiruzen can't lead from a hospital bed, and even if he recovers, the Reaper death seals aftereffects. He may not recover fully. The village needs leadership now, which means the council picks an interim leader or activates the succession protocol. A cold weight settled in Naruto's stomach. Danzo, Anko's mouth twisted. He's been preparing for this for years. Every political alliance, every favor, every route operative embedded in the bureaucracy, it all points to this moment. The second there's a power vacuum, he'll fill it. We can't let that happen. No, we can't. She looked at him. Jiraiya's already moving. He came to see me an hour ago. He has a plan, Tsunade. Tsunade Senju, third member of the Sanin, granddaughter of the first Hokage and the greatest medical ninja who ever lived. She left the village years ago. Personal reasons, ugly ones, but she's the only candidate with enough political weight to block Danzo's appointment. If she comes back and accepts the position, the council can't refuse her. Her bloodline alone gives her more legitimacy than Danzo could buy with a lifetime of scheming. Where is she? Somewhere in the gambling towns between here and the coast. Jiraiya has a general location from his spy network. He wants to leave immediately. I'm going with him. Anko didn't argue. She just nodded, as if she'd already known. So am I. Your arm will be fine in 2 days. Accelerated healing isn't just for Jinchuriki. I've been pushing chakra into the bone since the fight ended. She flexed the fingers of her sling arm and only barely grimaced. We leave tomorrow. Jiraiya wants to move fast. The council session is in 10 days. If Danzo gets his appointment confirmed before we return with Tsunade, it's over. He'll have root embedded in every command structure within a week, and we'll never dig him out. Then we don't let him. A noise from the hallway drew their attention. Kakashi was walking toward them, and he looked terrible. His vest was scorched, his mask was blood-stained, and he moved with the careful gait of someone managing multiple injuries they hadn't bothered to have treated. His single visible eye was flat with exhaustion. He stopped in front of Naruto and stood there for a moment, saying nothing. Your barriers saved the market district, Kakashi said finally. The containment arrays at the south gate held off an entire sound platoon until Anbu arrived. The tactical deployment plan you drew up, the Hokage showed it to the Jounin commanders this morning. They're calling it the most effective defensive preparation they've seen since the Kyuubi attack. I had help, Naruto said. Anko, Jiraiya, you designed the barrier network. You placed the tags. You broke Orochimaru's barrier on the rooftop and created the opening that kept the Hokage alive. Kakashi's eye held his. And you stopped the Ikabai's transformation single-handedly. The Anbu monitoring team saw it. Naruto wasn't sure what to do with the look Kakashi was giving him. It wasn't the vague, distracted acknowledgement he was used to from his Jounin instructor. It was something heavier, something that carried the weight of recognition and regret. I failed you, Kakashi said. The words dropped into the corridor like stones into still water. Anko went very quiet. I focused on Sasuke because I saw my old teammate in him, the genius, the bloodline, the darkness. I saw what I thought was the bigger risk, the student who needed me most, and I was wrong. He paused. The admission cost him something. Naruto could see it in the tension around his eye, the way his hands stayed carefully still at his sides. You needed me, and I wasn't there. Anko was, Jiraiya was, I wasn't. I'm sorry. Naruto looked at his teacher for a long time. The anger was there. A year's worth of neglect, of being the afterthought, of watching Kakashi pour attention into Sasuke while Naruto and Sakura scrambled to keep up. It was real, and it was earned, and Naruto wasn't going to pretend it wasn't, but anger and understanding could coexist. Yeah. Naruto said, You were wrong, and I'm glad you can say that. He stood and met Kakashi's eye evenly, not looking up at him the way a student looks at a teacher, meeting him level as something closer to an equal. Sasuke still has the curse mark. It's getting worse. If you want to help him, bring him to me. That's the one thing you can do that nobody else can arrange. Kakashi nodded slowly. I'll talk to him. Don't talk. Drag him if you have to. That mark is eating him alive, and his pride is going to kill him faster than Orochimaru will. Something that might have been dark humor flickered in Kakashi's eye. You sound like your mother. People keep telling me things about my parents. I wish someone had told me when it mattered. The words came out sharper than Naruto intended, and he saw Kakashi take the hit, another stone added to the pile of guilt the man was clearly accumulating. Naruto softened slightly. Talk to Sasuke. I'll be back in a few days. He walked away. Anko fell into step beside him. Behind them, Kakashi stood alone in the hospital corridor, looking older than his years. They left before dawn. Jiraiya met them at the village gate with a travel pack and the air of a man accustomed to walking out of one crisis and straight into another. The guards on duty noted their departure. Anko had filed the mission paperwork herself. A retrieval assignment signed off by the Hokage's emergency proxy. An administrative functionary who was technically in charge until the council decided otherwise, and was terrified enough of Anko to sign anything she put in front of him. The road from Konoha to the coastal gambling towns was 3 days on foot at civilian pace. Jiraiya set a shinobi pace, roof-hopping through the forest at speed, which would cut it to a day and a half. Naruto kept up easily. His stamina was effectively limitless, and the month of training had refined his chakra-enhanced movement to the point where he could maintain top speed without conscious effort. Anko ran beside him, her injured arm out of the sling now, the bone knitting faster than she'd predicted. They traveled through the morning without talking much. The urgency of the mission didn't encourage small talk, and all 3 of them were processing the aftermath of the invasion in their own way. Jiraiya moved with the grim focus of a spy master whose worst predictions had come true. Anko ran with the sharp-edged energy of someone who'd just fought the demon of her past and won, but hadn't finished bleeding yet. Naruto ran and thought. He thought about the Hokage, lying in a hospital bed with his soul torn. About Sasuke, walking around with a parasite in his neck and too proud to admit he was dying. About Gaara, a mirror-image Jinchuriki whose broken seal had almost destroyed 2 villages. About Danzo, circling the Hokage seat like a vulture, and about what came next. A month ago, he'd been a genin with a chip on his shoulder and a bellyful of fox. Now he was something else, something the village didn't have a category for, not quite a genin anymore, not yet a chunin, but operating at a level that made those ranks meaningless. He'd fought in a war. He'd saved the Hokage's life. He'd stopped a Biju transformation, and the world was starting to notice. That was the part that worried him. Not the enemies, Orochimaru, Danzo, whoever came next. Naruto had never been afraid of enemies. What worried him was the weight of what he was becoming. The expectations. The responsibilities. The people who were starting to look at him not as the fox brat or the class clown, but as someone who mattered. Because mattering meant people depended on you, and people depending on you meant you could fail them. He pushed the thought aside. The road demanded focus. Philosophical crises could wait until after they'd secured a Hokage. They stopped at noon to rest and eat. Jiraiya produced ration bars and water from his pack, and they sat on a rocky outcropping overlooking a river valley, the trees spread out below them in an unbroken carpet of green. "Tsunade's not going to come willingly," Jiraiya said, chewing a ration bar with the expression of a man who'd eaten thousands of them and hated every single one. "I should prepare you for that. She's stubborn, she's bitter. She's got a drinking problem that would kill a normal person, and she hasn't set foot in Konoha in over a decade." "Why'd she leave?" Naruto asked. Jiraiya was quiet for a moment. "She lost people. Her brother Nowaki, he was 12, died on a mission. Then her lover, Dan Kato, killed in the Second War. Both of them wanted to be Hokage. Both of them died before they got the chance. After Dan, something in Tsunade broke. She developed a phobia of blood, ironic for the greatest medic alive, and she walked away from everything. The village, her name, her legacy. She's been running ever since." "Running from grief," Anko said. "Running from grief, and from the expectation that she should be strong enough to handle it. She's a Senju, granddaughter of the god of Shinobi. People expected her to be unbreakable. When she broke anyway, she couldn't face the contradiction. So how do we convince her? I don't know. Logic won't work. She knows the arguments. Guilt won't work. She's been guilting herself for years. Duty won't work. She'll laugh in your face." Jiraiya looked at Naruto. "But you're a wild card, kid. You have a way of getting through to people that defies conventional strategy." "I'm not a strategy. I'm a person." "That's exactly what I mean." They moved on. The afternoon passed in a blur of forest and hills, the terrain gradually shifting from the dense woodland around Konoha to the more open, rolling country of the eastern coast. By late afternoon, they'd reached the outskirts of Tanzaku town. A sprawling, garish collection of gambling halls, bars, and hotels that existed in a permanent state of neon-lit twilight. The kind of place where missing Nin went to disappear, and Sanin went to drink. Jiraiya's intelligence pointed to a specific district, the high-stakes gambling quarter, where the pots were big enough to match Tsunade's legendary appetite for losing money. They split up to cover more ground, Jiraiya taking the north sector, Anko the south, and Naruto the central strip. He found her in the third bar he checked. She was sitting at a corner table with a bottle of sake and a blonde woman in a dark kimono who turned out to be her assistant, Shizune. The table was littered with empty bottles and losing lottery tickets. Tsunade herself was not what Naruto expected. She looked 30, maybe 35, with a figure that explained why Jiraiya's descriptions of her always seemed slightly breathless. But Naruto's Kagura Shingen cut through the surface instantly. Under the transformation jutsu, a masterful one, seamless, was a woman in her 50s, her actual body carrying the wear of decades of hard living, and her chakra was extraordinary. Massive, precise, with a medical refinement that was like watching a symphony orchestra compared to the garage bands of ordinary medics. Even diminished by years of disuse and alcohol, her signature was cage level. She felt him looking. Her eyes, honey brown, sharp despite the alcohol, locked onto him from across the bar, and something in her expression shifted. "You're staring, kid," she said. Her voice was low, husky, with the scratched velvet quality of someone who'd been drinking and smoking for longer than he'd been alive. "And you're leaking chakra like a broken pipe. Who the hell are you?" "Uzumaki Naruto." The name hit her like a slap. He watched it land, saw the flicker of recognition, the involuntary micro-expression of pain, the rapid-fire connection between Uzumaki and every memory that name carried. Kushina. Minato, the village she'd left, the people she'd lost. "Jiraiya sent you," she said flatly. "Jiraiya came with me. He's searching the north end of town." Naruto walked to her table and sat down across from her without waiting for an invitation. Shizune made a small noise of protest that died when Tsunade didn't object. "Konoha was invaded 3 days ago. Orochimaru attacked during the Chunin exam finals. The Hokage is in critical condition. We need you to come back." Tsunade took a long drink of sake, set the bottle down. Looked at him with eyes that were old and tired and unyielding. "No," she said. "The village needs a Hokage. If you don't take the seat, Danzo Shimura will." Something ugly flickered across her face at Danzo's name. That war hawk has been angling for the hat since before I was born. Let the council deal with him. The council can't. Not without a candidate strong enough to oppose him. You're the only one. Then the village has a problem because I'm not going back. She poured another drink with the steady hand of a career alcoholic. Konoha killed everyone I loved. The title of Hokage is a death sentence. Every person who's held it has died for that village, and the village just keeps asking for more. My grandfather. My granduncle, Nawaki Dan, she drank. I'm done paying. Naruto sat with that for a moment. He understood grief. He understood loss. He understood the desire to stop caring, to stop investing in people who could be taken away. He'd felt all of it, every day, growing up alone in a village that despised him. But he'd also learned in the past month that stopping was its own kind of death. I'm not going to tell you your grief isn't real, he said. And I'm not going to tell you that the village deserves you, because honestly, I don't know if it does. Konoha's done a lot of terrible things to a lot of people, including me. He met her eyes. But I can tell you what I've learned, which is that running doesn't work. Trust me, I spent 12 years trying to outrun what people thought I was, and all it did was make me tired. The only thing that changed anything was stopping and fighting. Fighting for what? A village that treats its heroes like disposable weapons. Fighting for the people inside the village who are worth it. Fighting so the next kid who grows up alone has someone in his corner. Fighting so the people who use seals and cages and curse marks to control others don't get to sit in the big chair and do it to everyone. The silence stretched. Shizune was watching Naruto with wide eyes. Tsunade's expression hadn't changed, still hard, still closed, but something behind her eyes was working. Processing. You said Orochimaru attacked, she said. What happened to him? The Hokage used the Reaper death seal, took both of Orochimaru's arms. He's alive but crippled. He can't use jutsu. He fled. Something complicated moved through Tsunade's face. The old man used the Reaper death seal and survived, because of my sensei. The word came out without conscious choice. Sensei, for Anko, the woman who'd trained him, fought beside him, bled for him. Anko Mitarashi. She was Orochimaru's former student. She disrupted the fight at the critical moment, changed the variables. The seal took his arms instead of his life. Anko Mitarashi, the one with the curse mark. The one who had the curse mark, I removed it. Another silence. Longer. Tsunade's eyes narrowed, and Naruto felt her chakra shift. A subtle probe. A diagnostic impulse that swept over him with the precision of a master surgeon. She was reading him, evaluating his chakra network, his seal structure, everything her medical expertise could perceive. Her eyes widened. You're the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, she said. And you're an Uzumaki, and you, she paused. Probed again, more deeply, her medical chakra touching the edges of his seal work with the delicate precision of a surgeon's scalpel. Your seal work. The modifications to the Kyuubi's containment array. Did Jiraiya do these? I did. You modified a seal designed by the fourth Hokage. I reinforced it, opened some pathways, closed others. The original design is a masterpiece. I didn't change the architecture, I just optimized the flow. Made the interaction between my chakra and the Kyuubi's less adversarial. Tsunade stared at him for a very long time. The sake bottle sat forgotten on the table. Behind her, Shizune had covered her mouth with both hands. How old are you? Tsunade asked. 12. 12. She said it like she was tasting something she couldn't identify. 12 years old, and you're modifying S-rank seal arrays and extracting curse marks. Kushina's boy, and Minato's. Yeah, a breath, and Minato's. The bar's front door opened and Jiraiya walked in, followed by Anko. The toad sage spotted Tsunade and his face went through a rapid sequence of emotions. Relief, pain, hope, wariness, before settling into a careful neutrality. Tsunade, he said. Jiraiya. She poured another sake, then poured a second and pushed it toward the empty chair beside Naruto. Sit down. Your students already made the pitch. I haven't said yes. But you haven't kicked us out. Give me time. Jiraiya sat. Anko remained standing, leaning against the wall by the door, watching the room with the automatic alertness of someone who'd spent her career in places where exits mattered. The conversation that followed lasted 3 hours. Jiraiya laid out the political situation, Danzo's maneuvering, the council's vulnerability, the power vacuum threatening to swallow the village. Anko contributed intelligence on Root's activities and the threat they posed to Konoha's shinobi corps. Naruto mostly listened, interjecting when the discussion turned to sealing, which it did, repeatedly, because Tsunade kept circling back to the subject with a fascination she couldn't quite suppress. "You really removed the curse mark," she said at one point, directed at Naruto. "Completely. No residual contamination. Completely. The extraction teams gave up on that years ago, 3 deaths during failed attempts. The root integration was considered irreversible. Other people tried to contain it. I could see it differently. The Uzumaki Kagura Shingen lets me differentiate between native and foreign chakra at the molecular level. The curse mark looked integrated, but it wasn't. It was parasitic, mimicking native pathways without actually merging with them. I just had to separate the real from the fake." Tsunade's eyes were bright now, the alcohol haze burned away by professional interest. "And the Ikibai Jinchuriki, Jiraiya told me, you stabilized a failing Biju containment seal in field conditions. Patch job, temporary, he needs a full reconstruction, which you could do. Given time and proper conditions, yeah." She sat back in her chair and looked at Jiraiya. "You realize what he is, right? What this bloodline represents?" "I've had a month to think about it," Jiraiya said. "He's the most talented seal user since his mother, maybe since Uzushiaga Cure fell. He's more than that. If he can extract parasitic seal constructs and repair Biju containment arrays at 12, she shook her head. The medical applications alone. Chakra-based diseases, parasitic jutsu, neural pathway damage from genjutsu overexposure. Half the conditions we treat symptomatically could be cured if we had someone who could interact with chakra at the level he's describing." "Come back and find out," Naruto said. Tsunade looked at him. He looked back, steady and open and unafraid, not because he didn't understand what he was asking, but because he did. "Konoha isn't the village you left," he said. "It's not the village I grew up in either. It's better in some ways and worse in others. But it's got people in it worth protecting, and right now those people are going to end up under Danzo's boot if someone with actual strength doesn't step up." He paused. "Your grandfather built that village. Your granduncle died protecting it. Your brother and Dan wanted to lead it. You can't bring any of them back, but you can make sure what they cared about doesn't die too." Silence. Then Tsunade laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It was raw, cracked, the laugh of someone feeling an old wound get torn open and finding, underneath the scar tissue, something that was still alive. "Kushina's fire and Minato's brain," she said. "God help us all." She reached for the sake bottle, looked at it for a long moment, then set it down untouched. "I'll come, not for the village, not for the title, for you and for whatever the hell you're becoming, because I want to see where it goes." "That's good enough," Naruto said. They would have left that night, but the universe had other plans. Naruto felt the approaching chakra signatures while they were settling their bar tab, 2 of them, coming from the northeast, moving at a pace that suggested neither urgency nor stealth. Just travel. But the signatures themselves were anything but casual. Both were enormous, cage level, and one of them carried a quality that made every alarm bell in Naruto's head go off simultaneously. Cold, dark, vast. And underneath the surface, layered beneath a perfectly controlled exterior, the unmistakable resonance of a Sharingan. "Someone's coming," Naruto said. Anko was already at the window. Jiraiya's expression went flat. Tsunade, reading the room with the combat instincts of a Sanin, stood and pushed Shizune behind her. "2 of them," Naruto said, his Kagura Shingen mapping the signatures in detail. "One has a Sharingan. The other feels like water, like an ocean. His chakra reserves are massive and completely alien." "Akatsuki," Jiraiya said. The word dropped like a hammer. "Itachi Uchiha and Kasama Hoshigaki." Enko's hand went to her kunai pouch. Here, now, they're tracking Naruto, the Akatsuki want the Biju, all of them. I've had reports for months that they were mobilizing. Jiraiya moved to the door. I'll intercept. Tsunade, Anko, take Naruto and… No, Naruto said. They all looked at him. I'm not running from this. If they're here for me, they'll follow wherever I go. And I'd rather face them with 3 of the strongest people alive at my side than get caught alone later. Jiraiya opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. He looked at Anko, who shrugged one shoulder, a gesture that said he's not wrong and you know it. Fine, Jiraiya said, but follow my lead. Itachi Uchiha is not someone you fight head-on. His genjutsu is Sharingan-based, visual triggers. Naruto had been studying. Anko's infiltration training included counterintelligence briefings on every known S-rank threat, and Itachi's file had been among them. I won't meet his eyes. I don't need to. The Kagura Shingen gives me a full combat picture without visual contact. Jiraiya stared at him, then laughed shortly. Minato's kid, all right. Let's go. They met the 2 Akatsuki members on the road outside Tanzaku town in a stretch of empty highway flanked by rice paddies. The setting sun threw long shadows across the road, and the 2 figures approaching from the east were silhouetted against the dying light. Itachi Uchiha was smaller than Naruto expected. Average height, slight build, with long dark hair tied back and the high-collared black cloak with red clouds that marked the Akatsuki. His face was calm, eerily so, with the stillness of a frozen lake. His Sharingan was active, 3 Tamo spinning lazily in crimson irises. Kasama Hashigaki was not small. He was massive, taller than Jiraiya, broader, with blue-gray skin and small, sharp eyes that gleamed with predatory amusement. The sword on his back, same hata, the legendary chakra-eating blade, was wrapped in bandages and twitched like a living thing. Jiraiya of the Sanin, Itachi said. His voice was soft, measured, as empty of emotion as his face. And Tsunade, we didn't expect both of you. Life's full of surprises, Jiraiya said. He'd already dropped into a combat stance, his hair bristling with gathering chakra. Beside him, Tsunade had pulled on her gloves, a small gesture that transformed her from a civilian woman into something that radiated lethal intent. Turn around, Itachi. You're not taking the boy. We're not here to take him, not today. Itachi's eyes, which Naruto was carefully not looking at, keeping his gaze fixed on the man's chest while his Kagura Shingen provided a complete spatial awareness of both targets, moved to Naruto. We're here to evaluate. Evaluate this. Anko said, and threw 3 kunai in a pattern that covered Itachi's escape routes, while simultaneously drawing a seal tag from her coat. The kunai were a distraction. The real attack was the disruption seal arcing through the air toward Itachi's position. Itachi deflected the kunai without moving his feet. The seal tag he caught between 2 fingers and examined with what might have been curiosity before it detonated in a burst of chakra-disrupting energy. When the flash cleared, Itachi was standing 5 meters to the left of his original position, unruffled. Interesting seal work, he said. Use Uzumaki design. Your students… Don't talk to her about me, Naruto said. He stepped forward past Jiraiya and Tsunade into the space between the 2 groups. If you're here to evaluate, evaluate. Kasama's grin widened. I like this one, got some fire. His hand drifted to Samehata's handle. Can I? No. Itachi's voice didn't change pitch, but Kasama's hand stopped. The big man shrugged, but he obeyed. Naruto, use Uzumaki, Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. You removed Orochimaru's curse mark from Mitarashi Anko. You stabilized the Ikebai's seal. You broke a barrier maintained by 4 of Orochimaru's elite during the Konoha invasion. You're well-informed. We're thorough. Itachi regarded him for a moment. You're not looking at my eyes. I don't need to. The Kagura Shingen, I've read about it. The Uzumaki clan's sensory bloodline, rarer than the Sharingan in its way, I wasn't certain it had survived Uzushio's fall. Surprise. Something that might have been the ghost of amusement passed through Itachi's expression. A word of counsel, Naruto Uzumaki. What you are, what you're becoming, will draw attention from forces far beyond Orochimaru. The Akatsuki will come for you eventually. Not today, but eventually. He paused. Grow stronger. What you've accomplished in a month is remarkable, but it won't be enough for what's coming. Is that a threat? It's an observation. His Sharingan spun, from someone who understands the weight of being defined by what you carry. The words landed strangely. Not like a threat, like something sadder. More personal. Naruto's Kagura Shingen was reading Itachi's chakra signature in detail, and what he found there was contradictory. The surface was cold, controlled, lethal. But underneath, deep in the signature's foundation, there was something that felt like grief. Old, vast, carefully contained grief, held in check by an iron will that never wavered. Naruto filed that away. He didn't understand. Chapter 6. Unchained. The gates of Konoha looked different in the morning light. Naruto had seen them 1,000 times, walked through them on missions, stared at them from the inside during all those years when leaving meant freedom and staying meant endurance. But today, returning from the Tsunade retrieval with 3 Sanin-level shinobi at his back, the gates looked like what they actually were. A threshold. The boundary between the world outside, where he'd faced down Akatsuki and recruited a Hokage, and the world inside, where the real fight was waiting, Danzo's fight. The political one. The kind you couldn't win with a Rasengan. Tsunade walked beside him, sober for the first time in what Shizune quietly confirmed was a while. Her honey-brown eyes taking in the village she'd abandoned with an expression that was equal parts homecoming and funeral. She'd shed the transformation jutsu on the road. Her real face, lined and weathered and fierce, was the one she'd present to the council. No illusions, no hiding. It's smaller than I remember, she said. It's the same size, Jiraiya said. You're bigger. That's either poetic or a fat joke, and either way I'm going to hit you. Anko walked on Naruto's other side, moving with the coiled alertness she always carried in populated areas. Her injuries from the invasion had healed fully during the trip. The cracked ribs knit, the sword wound sealed, her body restored to the lethal efficiency that 13 years of curse mark suppression had been quietly undermining. She was faster now than she'd been before the extraction, stronger, her chakra flowing through channels that had been partially blocked for over a decade. The woman Orochimaru had crippled was gone. What remained was the woman she was always supposed to be. The gate guards recognized them and went rigid. One of them, a Chunin Naruto vaguely recognized from the mission desk, actually dropped his clipboard. Tsunade-sama, he stammered. We weren't informed. No, that was intentional. Tsunade swept past him without slowing. Where's the council meeting? The Hokage Tower, ma'am. They're in session right now. They've been in session since. But Tsunade was already walking, and the rest of them followed, and the gate guard was left standing in their wake with his clipboard on the ground and his mouth open. The village bore its scars from the invasion with the stubborn resilience that Konoha had turned into an art form. Damaged buildings were already being rebuilt, scaffolding climbing the faces of structures that had taken hits during the fighting. The streets were busy. Not with the carefree bustle of peacetime, but with the purposeful movement of a community putting itself back together. Shinobi in dirty flak jackets hauled rubble. Civilians swept glass from storefronts. Children sat on curbs and watched the reconstruction with wide eyes. People noticed Tsunade as she passed. The recognition spread through the streets like a wave, heads turning, whispers building, the name traveling faster than their footsteps. By the time they reached the central avenue that led to the Hokage Tower, they had an unofficial escort of dozens of curious, hopeful, confused villagers trailing at a respectful distance. Naruto caught fragments of the whispers. Tsunade-sama, she's back. Is she here for the Hokage seat? Who's that boy with her? Wait, is that the Uzumaki kid? That last one hit differently than the whispers he was used to. The old whispers had been cold, fearful, tinged with the reflexive hatred of people who saw the fox before they saw the boy. These were different, curious. Some of them almost respectful. Word had gotten out about the invasion, about the barrier network that had contained the enemy assault. About the genin who'd stopped a Biju transformation and broken the barrier, imprisoning the Hokage. Naruto didn't know how much detail the rumor mill had captured, but enough had leaked that his name no longer carried only the weight of the Kyuubi. It was strange, being looked at with something other than contempt. He wasn't sure he trusted it yet. The Hokage Tower loomed ahead, its red-roofed silhouette unchanged despite the damage to the surrounding blocks. The council chamber was on the 3rd floor, behind heavy wooden doors that were flanked by Anbu guards who took one look at Tsunade and stepped aside without a word. Tsunade pushed the doors open and walked in. The chamber was a semicircular room with tiered seating arranged around a central floor. The village council was in full attendance. The clan heads, the civilian representatives, the advisory board. Hamura Mitokado and Koharu Udatane, the 2 surviving teammates of the 3rd Hokage, sat in the elevated positions flanking the empty Hokage's chair. And at the center of the floor, standing before the assembled council with his hands clasped behind his back and an expression of patient authority, was Shimura Danzo. He'd been speaking when the doors opened. His words died mid-sentence as Tsunade entered, and the chamber went so silent that Naruto could hear the tick of the clock on the far wall. Danzo recovered first. He always did. The man's composure was a weapon as deadly as any jutsu, honed over decades of political warfare. His one visible eye settled on Tsunade with an expression that mixed recognition, calculation, and something that was almost admiration in a less reptilian face. "Tsunade," he said, "this is unexpected. For you, maybe." She walked to the center of the floor, directly into the space Danzo had been occupying, and he was forced to shift sideways or be physically displaced. He shifted. The tiny concession of ground was noticed by everyone in the room. "I'm here to assume the position of 5th Hokage. Any objections?" The chamber erupted, not in protest, in chaos. Voices overlapping, questions shouted, clan heads rising from their seats, the civilian representatives looking at each other in confusion. Hamura and Koharu exchanged a glance that carried decades of shared history and silent communication. Danzo raised his hand and the noise subsided, not because of his authority, because everyone wanted to hear what he'd say. "The succession process has protocols," he said, his voice measured and calm. "The candidate must be nominated by the advisory board, confirmed by a majority council vote, and approved by the fire daimyo's office. You can't simply walk in and declare yourself Hokage. Watch me." Tsunade turned to face the council. "My name is Tsunade Senju, granddaughter of Hashirama Senju, the 1st Hokage. Grandniece of Tabarama Senju, the 2nd. I am a Sanin of Konoha, a veteran of 2 wars and the foremost medical ninja in the shinobi world. The 3rd Hokage is incapacitated. The village is recovering from an invasion. And I am here, standing in front of you, offering to lead." She let that settle. "Danzo Shimura has also offered to lead. I'd like to hear him explain to this council why a man who operates a secret military division outside the Hokage's authority, staffed by operatives who have been sealed into obedience against their will, should be trusted with the hat." The silence that followed was different from the first one. Heavier, more dangerous, Danzo's expression didn't change, not a flicker. But Naruto, standing at the chamber entrance with his Kagura Shingen fully active, watched the old man's chakra signature spike and then clamp down hard. Control. Absolute, practiced control over every physiological response that might betray him. "Those are serious accusations," Danzo said. "They are, and I can prove them." Tsunade looked toward the door. Naruto, he'd been waiting for this. They'd planned it on the road back. Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Anko working through the political angles while Naruto prepared the technical demonstration that would either break Danzo's hold on the council or provoke him into something drastic. Naruto walked to the center of the chamber. The council's eyes followed him, and he felt the weight of their attention. The curiosity, the skepticism, the residual prejudice, the dawning recognition that this boy was not what they'd been told he was. "My name is Uzumaki Naruto," he said, His voice was steady, not loud. He didn't need volume. He needed clarity. I'm a genin of Konoha, and I have a bloodline ability that allows me to perceive and interact with seals at a fundamental chakra level. 1 month ago, I used this ability to completely extract Orochimaru's curse mark from special Jounin Mitarashi Anko, a feat that 3 seal masters and the Hokage himself were unable to accomplish. He let that register. I can also detect seals on other people, including seals that are designed to be hidden. Danzo's eye narrowed. Just a fraction. Just enough. During the invasion preparation, I was approached by an operative of the organization known as Root, a division that was officially disbanded by the 3rd Hokage's direct order over a decade ago. The operative carried a curse-type seal on his tongue, designed to prevent him from speaking about Root's operations. This seal is not standard Konoha issue. It is not authorized by any existing military protocol. And it is, by every definition, a control mechanism applied to a Konoha shinobi without his consent. The council members were very still. Several of the clan heads, Hayashi Hyuuga, Shukaku Nara, Inoichi Yamanaka, had expressions that suggested they were hearing confirmation of something they'd long suspected but never been able to prove. I can remove these seals, Naruto said. I can do it safely, painlessly, and completely. And I'm prepared to demonstrate. Danzo moved, not physically. His body remained perfectly still, the portrait of dignified composure, but his chakra surged, a burst of intent, invisible to everyone in the room except Naruto, directed at something outside the chamber. A signal, a command. The Kagura Shingen painted the picture in vivid detail. 8 chakra signatures, previously suppressed to near invisibility, activating simultaneously in the walls and ceiling of the chamber. Root operatives, embedded in the building's infrastructure, responding to Danzo's silent command. 8 operatives, Naruto said, cutting across whatever Danzo had been about to say. In the walls, 2 above us, 6 around the perimeter, they just activated. He pointed at each position in sequence, his Kagura Shingen tracking the signatures with pinpoint precision. There, there, there. 2 more behind the northern panel, 1 under the floor, 2 in the ceiling cavity. The Anbu guards at the door drew weapons. The clan heads were on their feet. Shukaku Nara's shadow stretched across the floor, ready to bind. Hayashi Hyuuga activated his Byakugan and confirmed, with a tight-lipped nod, every position Naruto had identified. They're there, Hayashi said. 8 operatives, armed, concealed. The room turned to Danzo. The old man stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by a council that was looking at him with expressions ranging from cold fury to vindicated suspicion, and for the first time in Naruto's experience, something cracked in that composure. Not much. A tightening of the jaw. A hardening of the eye, the micro-expressions of a man who had just watched decades of careful construction begin to crumble. A security precaution, Danzo said smoothly. Given the recent invasion, additional protection for the council. Hidden operatives answering to you personally inside the Hokage Tower during a succession meeting where you're the candidate. Tsunade's voice could have cut glass. That's not a security precaution. That's a coup in waiting. You go too far, Tsunade. I haven't gone far enough. She turned to the Anbu. Secure the Root operatives. Non-lethal, they're victims, not villains. The Anbu moved. In the walls, the Root operatives had a choice, comply or fight. They were outnumbered, exposed, and surrounded by an entire council of combat-capable shinobi, including 2 Sanin. They were also, Naruto suspected, operating under sealed compulsion that limited their ability to make independent decisions, which was exactly the point. The extraction took less than 5 minutes. The Anbu pulled the 8 Root operatives from their concealment positions, and the council chamber became an impromptu demonstration as 8 masked shinobi were lined up on the floor, each one rigid with the helpless compliance of people whose tongues were literally sealed. Naruto knelt beside the first one. I'm going to remove the seal on your tongue, he said quietly, just between them. It won't hurt. When it's gone, you'll be able to speak freely. You don't have to say anything you don't want to, but you'll have the choice. The operative's eyes, visible above the mask, were wide. Confused, frightened, and underneath the fear, buried so deep it was almost invisible, something that looked like hope. Naruto placed his fingertips on the operative's jaw. The Kagura Shingen mapped the tongue seal in an instant, a nasty piece of work, elegant in its cruelty, designed to cause paralysis of the vocal cords if the bearer attempted to speak about designated topics. It had roots that extended into the nervous system, not just the chakra network. More sophisticated than the curse mark in some ways, more insidious, but still a seal, still foreign chakra pretending to be native, still a cage. He pulled it out, the operative gasped. His hands went to his throat, fingers pressing against his jaw where the seal had been. His mouth opened. Closed, opened again. His voice was raw, rusty, the voice of someone testing a muscle that had been locked for years. I can talk. You can talk, Naruto confirmed. He moved to the next operative, then the next. One by one, 8 root agents had their tongue seals removed, their autonomy restored, their silence broken. The council watched in absolute stillness. When Naruto finished the 8th extraction and stood, the chamber was transformed. 8 former root operatives sat on the floor, touching their own throats, testing their voices, some of them with tears running silently from behind their masks. The council members stared at them, at Naruto, at Danzo. Danzo hadn't moved. He stood exactly where he'd been standing, his one eye fixed on Naruto, and the composure was back in place. The crack sealed, the mask restored. But underneath it, Naruto's Kagura Shingen read the truth. The old man's chakra was turbulent, roiling with contained fury, and the cold, calculating churn of someone whose contingency plans had just been burned to the ground in public. This changes nothing, Danzo said, and his voice was steel-smooth, betraying nothing. Root's existence has always been about protecting Konoha from threats that conventional forces cannot address. Every operative serves willingly, do they? Tsunade looked at the 8 unsealed operatives. You can speak now, freely. For the first time in however long Danzo's had you sealed. Anyone want to tell the council about their willing service? Silence. Then the first operative, the one Naruto had unsealed first, slowly reached up and removed his mask. He was young. Mid-20s, maybe. Dark eyes, hollow cheeks, the gaunt look of someone who'd been living underground in every sense. He looked at the council, then at Danzo, and something hardened in his expression. I was recruited at age 6, he said. Taken from the orphanage, I didn't volunteer. None of us volunteered. We were conditioned, trained to suppress emotion, trained to obey, and sealed to ensure we could never speak about what we'd done or what was done to us. Another operative removed their mask. A woman, older, with scars on her face that spoke of years of combat. There are more of us. Dozens. Some embedded in Anbu, some in the regular forces, some in civilian positions throughout the village. All sealed. All operating under Danzo's direct command. A third. A fourth. Each one speaking for the first time, each testimony another nail in the coffin of Danzo's pretense. Naruto watched Danzo throughout. The old man's composure held, it was, Naruto had to admit, impressive in its way. The kind of self-control that only came from decades of operating in the shadows, managing crises, containing damage. Even now, with his operation being publicly dismantled, Danzo's mind was working. Naruto could see it in the microfluctuations of his chakra, calculations running, contingencies being evaluated, escape routes being mapped. And then Danzo made his move. It wasn't physical. It was political. He turned to Hamura and Koharu with an expression of measured regret and spoke in a voice pitched to carry throughout the chamber. Everything I have done has been for Konoha's protection. The methods may be questioned, but the results speak for themselves. Root has prevented 17 assassination attempts on Konoha officials in the past decade. Root intelligence has disrupted 8 enemy operations that the regular forces never detected. The sacrifices my operatives have made were not theirs to make, Naruto said. every eye turned to him. You took children from orphanages. You sealed their tongues so they couldn't cry for help. You conditioned them to suppress every emotion that makes a person human, and you called it sacrifice. His voice was quiet, but it carried the way a blade carries, sharp, precise, impossible to ignore. That's not sacrifice. Sacrifice is a choice. You took the choice away. Danzo looked at him. Really looked for the first time, and what Naruto saw in that single eye was not the cold calculation he expected. It was something more complicated. Recognition, perhaps. The recognition of a man looking at the instrument of his own destruction and understanding, with perfect clarity, that he had no answer to it. Because Naruto wasn't attacking Danzo with arguments Danzo could counter. He wasn't making political moves that Danzo could outmaneuver. He was simply removing the seals, breaking the locks, opening the cages, and letting the people inside speak for themselves. There was no counter-strategy for truth told freely. I move for Danzo Shimura's immediate arrest and investigation, Shukaku Nara said from the council tier, his voice carrying the lazy certainty of a man who'd already calculated every possible outcome and found only one acceptable answer. Seconded, Hayashi Hyuga said. Thirded, Inoichi Yamanaka added. And I volunteer the Yamanaka clan's interrogation services. Pro bono. The vote was swift. 12-3, with only Danzo's two closest allies, civilian representatives who owed their positions to his patronage, voting against. The Anbu moved in, and Danzo Shimura, for the first time in his long and shadowed career, was escorted from a room in restraints. He went quietly. No jutsu, no resistance, no desperate last stand. He walked between the Anbu with the dignity of a man who understood that this battle was lost, but the war in his mind was never truly over. As he passed Naruto, he paused. The Anbu tensed, but Danzo simply looked at the boy with that single, calculating eye. You'll learn, he said softly. You'll learn that the world isn't as clean as you want it to be, that protecting a village sometimes requires doing things the village can't know about, and when that day comes, you'll understand why I did what I did. Maybe, Naruto said, but I'll never do it your way. Danzo held his gaze for a moment longer, then walked on. The doors closed behind him. Tsunade stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by a council that had just watched its shadow government dismantled by a 12-year-old, and allowed herself a small, sharp smile. Well, she said. Anyone want to vote on the Hokage succession, or should we break for lunch? The vote was unanimous. The inauguration was 3 days later. Not a ceremony. Tsunade refused anything elaborate, calling it a waste of resources during reconstruction. She stood on the Hokage Tower balcony, accepted the hat from Himura and Koharu, put it on, and addressed the village in approximately 45 seconds. I'm Tsunade Senju. I'm your 5th Hokage. I've been gone a long time, and I'm not going to pretend that wasn't a mistake. But I'm here now, and here's what's going to happen. We're going to rebuild this village, we're going to take care of our people, and we're going to make sure that what happened during the invasion never happens again. That's it. Get back to work. The crowd, which had been expecting a longer speech, stood in stunned silence for a moment before someone started clapping. Then everyone was clapping, and Tsunade walked back inside with the air of someone who had already moved on to the next problem. The next problem, as it turned out, was Naruto. He was sitting in the Hokage's office when she arrived. Anko had let him in, having already established a working relationship with the tower's security staff that was based on mutual respect and a healthy dose of intimidation. Tsunade dropped into the chair behind the desk, which was buried under a mountain of paperwork that had accumulated during the power vacuum, and looked at him over the stacks. 3 things, she said. First, the Hokage is awake. Naruto's heart kicked. Hiruzen Jiji is awake, lucid, and demanding his pipe, which the medical staff are refusing to give him. The Reaper Death Seal did permanent damage. He'll never fight at full capacity again, but he's alive and coherent. He wants to see you when you have time. The relief hit Naruto like a wave, sudden and overwhelming. He'd been carrying the weight of the old man's condition for days, the guilt and worry compressing into a hard knot beneath his sternum. Alive, awake, demanding his pipe. That sounded like the Hokage he knew. Second thing, Tsunade continued. Gaara of the Sand is at the east gate with his siblings. He's requesting entry to the village specifically to see you. The Sand has formally surrendered and is negotiating a ceasefire. Gaara's here for his seal repair. I'll see him today. I know you will. I'm assigning Shizune as medical support for the procedure. What you did in the field was impressive, but a full seal reconstruction on a Jinchuriki is major work. I want a medic present. That's smart, thank you. Third thing. She leaned forward, elbows on the desk, and her expression shifted from administrative to personal. Sasuke Uchiha. The knot in Naruto's chest, which had loosened at the news about Hiruzen, tightened again. Kakashi reported to me this morning. Sasuke has been deteriorating. The curse mark's integration has accelerated since the invasion. The suppression seal Kakashi placed is failing. And Sasuke has been having contact with Orochimaru's agents, specifically the Sound Four, a team of elite operatives who have been spotted near the village walls. Naruto's hands clenched on his knees. They're here to recruit him. They're here to take him. Orochimaru needs a new body. His arms are gone. His current form is degrading. Sasuke's Sharingan is his best option. The curse mark is the leash, and the Sound Four are the handlers. I won't let that happen. I know. But here's the problem. Sasuke has to choose. Kakashi has talked to him. I've talked to him. The curse mark is influencing his judgment, yes, but underneath the influence, there's a boy who is choosing anger over healing, revenge over recovery. You've offered to remove the mark. He's refused. At some point we have to acknowledge that people make choices, even bad ones. Not if the choice is being made by a parasite in his neck. Tsunade studied him. You're not wrong. The curse mark does compromise free will. It amplifies negative emotions, suppresses positive ones, and creates a chemical dependency on the power it provides. In medical terms, Sasuke is an addict being offered his next fix by his dealer, but we can't force treatment. Not without becoming the thing we just tore down. She meant Danzo. She meant sealed tongues and stolen autonomy and the principle that you don't cage people for their own good, no matter how good your intentions. Naruto understood the argument. He even agreed with it in the abstract. But the abstract wasn't standing at the village wall with Orochimaru's handlers whispering in its ear. I'll talk to him, Naruto said. One more time. Tsunade nodded. That's all anyone can do. He found Gaara first. The Sand siblings were waiting at the East Gate's reception area, an administrative space that served as a holding zone for foreign shinobi awaiting clearance. Gaara sat on a wooden bench against the wall, his gourd on the floor beside him, his arms crossed over his chest. He looked different from the last time Naruto had seen him. The manic edge was gone, the killing intent that had been his constant companion replaced by something quieter, more focused. The patched job Naruto had done on his seal was holding, and the relative silence in Gaara's head had apparently allowed something resembling a normal personality to surface. It was a reserved personality. Watchful. But present in a way that the old Gaara, drowning in Shukaku's whispers, had never been. Temari and Kankuro flanked him like bodyguards, and their body language had changed too. Less fear, more protectiveness. The siblings had apparently discovered, in the weeks since the invasion, that the brother they'd been afraid of was someone they could actually talk to when he wasn't being driven insane by a broken seal. Naruto, Gaara said. He stood. The gesture was formal, deliberate, the greeting of someone who was still learning how to interact with people without the constant background noise of a biju screaming for blood. Thank you for agreeing to see me. I said I would. Let's get you fixed. The seal reconstruction took 4 hours. They used a medical suite in the hospital's secure wing, with Shizune monitoring Gaara's vitals and Anko running security on the perimeter. Naruto worked slowly, carefully, with a precision that his month of training had refined from raw instinct into genuine craft. The patch job he'd done in the forest had held, but underneath it, the original seal was a mess, poorly designed, deliberately imbalanced. With suppression arrays that crushed Shukaku's consciousness instead of containing it, and absolutely nothing protecting Gaara's psyche from the Biju's emotional bleed. He rebuilt it from the ground up. Not a copy of his own seal. The Kyubai's containment was the fourth Hokage's masterwork, and replicating it would have required Minato's specific genius. But Naruto drew on the principles, combining them with techniques from the Uzumaki scroll and his own intuitive understanding of Biju host dynamics. The new seal was layered. An inner containment that held Shukaku securely, a middle buffer that filtered the Biju's emotional and psychological influence before it reached Gaara's consciousness, and an outer interface that allowed Gaara to access a controlled amount of Shukaku's power without the madness, balanced, stable, humane. When he finished and withdrew his hands, Gaara sat up slowly. His eyes were wide. His hands were shaking, not with pain, but with the overwhelming sensation of silence. "It's quiet," he whispered. "It's completely quiet. I can't remember." He trailed off. His hand went to his forehead, to the kanji carved into his skin, and something broke behind his eyes. "I can't remember the last time it was quiet." Temari made a sound from the doorway, a small, strangled noise that she immediately suppressed, turning her face away. Kenkuro put his hand on her shoulder. Naruto sat back, drained but satisfied. The new seal hummed with stable resonance, clean and strong. It would hold. For years, decades, maybe permanently if Gaara didn't push it to extremes. "The power's still there," Naruto told him. "Shukaku's chakra, you can access it through the interface layer. Sand manipulation, defensive techniques, all of it, but it won't leak anymore. The whispers are gone. You'll need to learn how to use the power deliberately instead of having it forced on you, but I understand." Gaara looked at him with eyes that were clear and green and painfully human. "Naruto, I don't know how to repay this. You don't go home. Be the leader your village needs instead of the weapon they made you. That's enough." Gaara held his gaze for a long moment, then he extended his hand, a gesture so normal, so mundanely human that Temari's breath caught audibly. Naruto shook it. The sand didn't stir. The monster didn't wake. 2 Jinchuriki, 2 vessels, 2 boys who'd carried the world's fear inside their bodies since before they could speak, stood in a hospital room and shook hands like ordinary people. It was, Naruto thought, one of the better moments of his life. The Sand siblings left that afternoon, Gaara walking between them with a straightness to his posture that Naruto recognized. The same straightness Anko had shown after her extraction. The posture of someone who'd set down a weight they'd been carrying so long they'd forgotten what standing felt like. Then it was Sasuke's turn. Naruto found him at the Uchiha compound. The district was empty, had been empty since the massacre. The buildings maintained but uninhabited, a ghost town inside a living city. Sasuke lived in the main house alone, rattling around in rooms built for a family that no longer existed, and the loneliness of it had always been a quiet horror that nobody seemed to address. The compound gates were open. Naruto walked through them and down the main avenue, past empty shops and dark houses, until he reached the main house. Sasuke was on the porch, sitting on the steps, and he wasn't alone. 4 figures stood in the courtyard. 3 boys and a girl, all wearing sound headbands, all radiating the particular brand of casual menace that came from being Orochimaru's chosen enforcers. The Sound 4. Naruto recognized their chakra signatures from Anko's intelligence briefings. Each one carried a curse mark, each one was Jounin level, and each one was here for one reason. Sasuke saw Naruto approaching, and his expression went through a complicated series of changes. The curse mark on his neck was active, not fully, but the black pattern was visible at the edge of his collar, and his eyes had a feverish brightness that wasn't entirely natural. "Naruto," Sasuke said, "this isn't a good time." "Yeah, I can see that." Naruto stopped 10 meters from the group and looked at the Sound 4. His Kagura Shingen read all of them simultaneously, curse marks, 2 at stage 1 and 2 at stage 2, with chakra signatures twisted and amplified by Orochimaru's modifications. They were strong. Individually, each one was at least special Jounin level. Together, they were a legitimate threat. Naruto wasn't afraid of them. "You should leave," the large one said Jirobo if Anko's files were accurate. His tone was casual, almost bored. "This is private business." "Nothing Orochimaru does is private. It's parasitic." Naruto looked past them at Sasuke. "They're here to take you to him, you know that. They're not offering you power, they're offering you a cage." "Shut your mouth," the two-headed one, Sanin, snapped. "Lord Orochimaru offers strength beyond anything this pathetic village can provide. The Uchiha understands real power." "Real power." Naruto's voice was flat. "I've seen Orochimaru's real power up close. I pulled it out of a woman's neck after it spent 13 years torturing her. I patched a seal that his student designed to drive a 15-year-old insane. And 2 weeks ago, I watched the Hokage burn both his arms off." He looked at each of the Sound Four in turn. "You've got his marks on you, all 4 of you, which means you're leashed, just like Anko was. Just like Sasuke is. You're not disciples, you're batteries. He'll use your curse marks to fuel his jutsu and throw you away when you're drained." Sakin's face contorted. The other 3 shifted, Kidomaru's extra arms flexing, Tayuya's fingers twitching toward her flute, Jirobo's stance widening. The tension in the courtyard spiked. "Sasuke," Naruto said, ignoring them, "I'm asking you one more time. Let me remove the mark. Right now, right here. 5 minutes and it's gone. You'll have your own power, your sharing in, your training, everything that's actually yours. You don't need his poison." Sasuke sat on the porch steps and looked at Naruto. And for a long, terrible moment, the war inside him was visible on his face. The curse mark pulsing on his neck, amplifying the darkness, feeding the rage, whispering promises of power sufficient to kill Itachi. And beneath it, buried but not extinguished, the boy who'd been Naruto's rival, Naruto's teammate, the closest thing Naruto had to a brother. "You don't understand," Sasuke said. His voice was rough. "You don't know what I need. I know what you think you need. And I know what that mark is telling you that you need, but they're not the same thing. Itachi killed my entire family, my mother, my father, everyone, and he's still out there, stronger than anything in this village can match. If I stay here, if I play by Konoha's rules, I will never be strong enough. You will. I'll help you. Anko, Kakashi, Tsunade, there are people here who will help you get strong enough. You don't have to sell your soul." "I'm not selling my soul." The shout cracked the stillness of the compound. Birds erupted from the empty houses. The curse mark flared, black patterns racing across Sasuke's skin, and his Sharingan activated, 2 Tamo spinning in each eye, burning red. "You don't know what it's like. You don't know what it's like to have everything taken and be told to be patient, to trust the system, to wait. I'm done waiting." He stood. The curse mark was spreading now, covering half his face, and the power rolling off him was immense, amplified, corrupted, borrowed, but immense. The Sound Four shifted into formation around him, a protective escort, and the message was clear. He'd made his choice. Naruto looked at his teammate, his rival, his almost brother, standing in the ruins of his family's compound with a monster's mark spreading across his skin, and 4 of that monster's servants flanking him like an honor guard. And something inside Naruto went very, very cold. "If you walk out of this village with them," Naruto said, "I will come after you. I know. And I won't be gentle." Something flickered in Sasuke's expression. Behind the curse mark's influence, behind the rage and the grief, a flash of something that might have been relief. As if some part of him, the part that was still the boy and not the weapon, was grateful that someone cared enough to fight him. Then it was gone, and Sasuke turned his back and walked. The Sound Four fell in around him. Naruto let them reach the compound gate before he moved. He moved fast. The pursuit through Konoha's streets was brief. The Sound Four had planned their route to avoid the main thoroughfares, cutting through the empty Uchiha district to the eastern wall. But they hadn't planned for Naruto, and they certainly hadn't planned for what he'd become. He hit Jirobo first, the rear guard, the big one, positioned to block pursuit. a Rasengan to the midsection, golden-tinged and devastating, that launched the large man through a building wall and out the other side. Jirobo didn't get up. The disruption seal Naruto slapped on him during the strike suppressed the curse mark's healing factor, and without it, the damage was simply too severe for consciousness. Kidomaru spun to face him, 6 arms weaving threads of golden web into a defensive lattice. Naruto didn't engage the web. He sent 20 shadow clones in a flanking arc, while the original dropped a barrier seal that boxed Kidomaru into a 10-meter cube. Inside the barrier, the web had nowhere to anchor. Kidomaru's mobility advantage vanished, and the clones swarmed him. It took 9 seconds. Teuya raised her flute. Genjutsu, Naruto felt it wash over him, potent and layered, a symphony of illusions designed to trap the victim in a nightmare of escalating horror. His chakra reserves burned through it like sunlight through fog. He was in front of her before the first note finished, and the disruption seal he pressed to her forehead shut down her chakra, molding entirely. She collapsed. Sanin was the last, and the strongest. His curse mark activated fully, stage 2 transformation, his body splitting into 2 connected entities, both of them fast, both of them lethal. They came at Naruto from opposite sides, and for the first time in the engagement, he had to actually work. The fight lasted 30 seconds. Sanin and his twin were good, genuinely skilled, with a dual-body combat style that created overlapping attack patterns no single fighter should be able to handle. But Naruto wasn't a single fighter. He was a seal master with shadow clones and a Rasengan, and a month of training from a woman who'd forgotten more about combat than the Sound Four had ever learned. He ended it with a seal, a containment array deployed mid-combat that wrapped both of Sanin's bodies in a cage of hardened chakra. The twin entity thrashed, cursed, and then went still as the suppression field drained his mark's power. 4 Sound 4 members down. Elapsed time, under 2 minutes. The Uchiha District Street was cratered, webbed, and littered with the unconscious bodies of Orochimaru's elite, and Naruto wasn't breathing hard. Sasuke had stopped running. He stood at the end of the street, near the compound's eastern wall, his back to Naruto. The curse mark covered half his body now, the dark patterns crawling and receding in waves, and his chakra was a storm, Orochimaru's taint warring with his own, the Sharingan spinning wildly, everything in him at war with everything else. "You took them apart," Sasuke said without turning around. "All 4 of them, in seconds. They weren't who I came for." Sasuke turned. His face was half covered in curse mark patterns, one eye red with Sharingan, the other dark. He looked torn in half, literally, the human side and the monster side occupying the same body, neither one dominant. "Fight me." Sasuke said, "I don't want to fight you." "I know, fight me anyway." He came fast, Sharingan fast, curse mark enhanced, pouring everything he had into a straight-line assault that was part technique and part desperation. His hand crackled with lightning. The Chidori, Kakashi's gift, the assassination technique that Sasuke had made his own. Naruto met the Chidori with a Rasengan. The collision was catastrophic. Lightning and spiraling chakra detonated against each other, and the shockwave blew out windows for 100 meters in every direction. The 2 of them were blown apart, skidding across the cratered street, and then they were fighting, really fighting, the way they'd never fought before. Sasuke was strong. The curse mark's power, for all its corruption, was real. It amplified his speed, his strength, his Sharingan's predictive ability. He fought with the desperation of someone trying to prove something to himself, and every strike carried the weight of his grief, his rage, his loneliness. But Naruto was stronger. Not by a little. Not by the narrow margin of a close match. He was stronger the way a river is stronger than a stream, not through aggression, but through sheer, undeniable volume. His chakra reserves dwarfed Sasuke's even with the curse mark's amplification. His combat training under Anko had given him a tactical foundation that Sasuke's solo practice couldn't match. And his sealing abilities gave him options that no conventional fighter could answer. He let Sasuke come. Let him attack. Let him burn through the curse mark's power in a blaze of lightning and fury. He blocked, deflected, absorbed, and when Sasuke's assault finally slowed, when the curse mark began to recede, its power spent, and Sasuke stood panting in the ruins of his family's street with his hands shaking and his Sharingan fading, Naruto was still standing, untouched. "You're stronger than me," Sasuke said. The words came out like broken glass, each one cutting him on the way out. "You were the dead last. You were nothing. How? I was never nothing. Nobody is nothing." Naruto walked toward him. "Sasuke, this power you're chasing, Orochimaru's power, it's a lie. It's not yours. It'll never be yours. It's his, and he'll take it back the moment he takes your body." Sasuke's knees buckled. The curse mark had retreated fully now, and without its support, the exhaustion hit him all at once. He dropped to the ground, sitting in the rubble, and his face crumbled. Not into rage, into something worse, into grief. Raw, unprocessed, 12-year-old grief that had been buried under anger for so long it had fossilized, and now it was breaking free all at once, and Sasuke didn't know what to do with it. "I have to kill him," Sasuke whispered. "Itachi. I have to, it's all I have. If I can't do that, then what was the point? What was the point of surviving?" Naruto sat down across from him. In the rubble, in the ruins, in the empty heart of a dead clan's compound. 2 boys, 12 years old, carrying weights that would have crushed most adults. "The point is that you're alive," Naruto said. "And Itachi isn't the only thing in your future. You have a team, you have a village, you have me. And I'm telling you right now, if you want to get strong enough to face Itachi, I will help you get there. Not with curse marks and borrowed power. With real strength. Yours, you can't promise that. I can promise I'll be there. That's more than Orochimaru's offering." Sasuke sat in the rubble and shook. The tears came, and he didn't fight them, and Naruto didn't comment on them, and the empty compound held its silence around them like a held breath. After a long time, Sasuke raised his head. His eyes were red from crying, not Sharingan, and his face was raw and open in a way Naruto had never seen. "The curse mark," he said. "You said you could remove it. I can. Do it." Naruto placed his hands on Sasuke's neck. The curse mark's root system was deep, a month of growth fueled by rage and grief, but it was nothing compared to Anko's 13-year integration. Naruto's Kagura Shingen mapped it in seconds. His chakra, blue and gold, reached into the tangle and began to pull. The extraction took 8 minutes. Sasuke's body arched, his teeth clenched, his hands fisting in the rubble on either side of him. The curse mark fought, Orochimaru's fragment of consciousness screaming and clawing as it was dragged from its host. But Naruto was beyond being challenged by this. He'd done it before. He'd do it again, as many times as necessary, for as many people as needed. The last root came free. The curse mark dissolved. And Sasuke Uchiha sat in the ruins of his family's compound with clean skin and clear eyes, and the first genuine expression of peace Naruto had ever seen on his face. "It's gone," Sasuke said. "It's gone." Sasuke looked at his hands, turned them over, pressed his fingers to his neck where the mark had been. And then he looked at Naruto with an expression that was too complicated for words, gratitude and shame and relief, and the particular raw vulnerability of someone who'd just been saved from themselves. "Thank you," he said, and his voice broke on the second word. "Yeah, well..." Naruto stood and offered his hand. "Don't make me do that again." Sasuke took his hand and let Naruto pull him to his feet. They stood in the wreckage, surrounded by unconscious sound 4 members and the echoing silence of the Uchiha compound, and something between them shifted into a new configuration. Not the old rivalry, not the grudging tolerance of teammates who couldn't stand each other. Something steadier. Something that had been tested and survived. Naruto felt Anko's approach before he saw her, her chakra signature, warm and sharp and familiar, coming over the compound wall at speed. She landed in the street, took in the scene, 4 downed sound operatives cratered buildings, 2 boys standing in the middle of it, and her eyebrows climbed. "I leave you alone for 2 hours, she said, handled it. "I can see that." Her eyes went to Sasuke's neck, clean, unmarked. A grin spread across her face, fierce, proud, knowing. "Welcome to the club, Uchiha." Sasuke blinked at her, confused. "The Naruto removed my curse mark, and now I owe him my life club. Membership is small but dedicated." She jerked her thumb over her shoulder. "Anbu on the way for the Sound 4. Tsunade wants a debrief, and there's ramen at Ikaraku's that isn't going to eat itself." She turned and walked toward the compound gate. Naruto fell into step beside her, and after a moment's hesitation, Sasuke followed. The three of them walked through the Uchiha district and out into the living village, where the sun was setting over Konoha and the sounds of reconstruction filled the air. Hammers and saws and voices, the noise of a community rebuilding itself. People looked at them as they passed. A few pointed. A few whispered. A few, recognizing Naruto, nodded in acknowledgement, not the cold nod of grudging tolerance. Something warmer. Anko walked on his left, her trench coat swaying, her unmarked neck bare to the evening air. Sasuke walked on his right, quiet, drained, but present, really present for the first time in months. And ahead of them, the village spread out in the golden light, damaged and scarred and stubbornly, defiantly alive. Naruto thought about the Hokage, waking up in his hospital bed. About Gaara, walking home with clear eyes. About Tsunade behind the Hokage's desk, already transforming the village's future with every decision she made. About the root operatives, speaking freely for the first time in years. About Danzo, in a cell, facing the consequences of a lifetime of shadows. And he thought about Itachi's words on the road outside Tanzaku town. "Grow stronger. What you've accomplished in a month is remarkable, but it won't be enough for what's coming. What's coming?" The Akatsuki. More enemies, more threats, more people who wanted to use and control and destroy. The world was vast and dangerous and full of cages that needed breaking. Naruto smiled. "Hey, Anko." "Yeah, thanks for sticking around." She looked at him sideways. The fierce grin softened into something rarer, something genuine and unguarded that she showed to almost no one. "Kid, I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me." "Good." They walked into the evening and the village rebuilt around them, and the future opened ahead like a road with no end, uncertain, dangerous, and full of light.